There's rebellion in the ranks of the Tory party as a new Chancellor takes control.
Morning to you. It's 6 o'clock. It's the 17th of October. A Monday, I think, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's Monday. There you go. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel and Stephen.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The new Chancellor insists the Prime Minister is still in control of her government despite Conservative backbenchers' attempts to oust her. It comes ahead of a 1922 committee set to take place later today, the first time since Parliament returned from recess.
Hundreds of Met officers should be sacked for sexual misconduct, misogyny, racism and homophobia. That's according to the new police commissioner, after a damning report revealed officers have been breaking the law and getting away with it.
From damaging priceless art to pouring pints of milk in the supermarket aisles, we'll be speaking to the people behind Animal Rebellion and Just Stop Oil to ask them if their protests have gone too far.
And more controversy for the Crown as the former Prime Minister John Major speaks out over the latest series. We'll ask if it's right to include Princess Diana's final moments for entertainment purposes. Does it blur the lines between fact and fiction?
And there's going to be a lot to talk about this morning. As always, we love to hear from you. Your views so important to us here at the People's Channel. Get in touch on Twitter or on email.
Well, Liz Truss is facing even more pressure this morning after 3 of her own MPs called on her to resign.
Tory members, or members of Parliament, I should say, Crispin Blunt, Andrew Bridgen and Jamie Wallace all wrote to the Prime Minister to ask her to stand down, with reports suggesting that a further 100 are prepared to do the same.
Well, Labour is currently calling for Liz Truss to face the Commons, accusing her of being in office but not in power.
Well, joining us for the latest this morning is the chair of the Women in Think Tanks Forum, Phoebe Arslanigat-Wakefield. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Look, how serious is this for Liz Truss? She'll be hoping that after Friday she can draw a line under all of that, and I suppose it's a question of whether or not there is a more unifying candidate out there who can pull together all the arguing ranks within the party.
Yes, I mean, let's be absolutely clear. It's really just, I think, game over for Truss. It's a waiting game now. The only reason that she is still in power, still in post, well, really maybe not even in power, just in office, is because the Tory party hasn't decided what the next best option is. You know, there's been lots of conversation over the weekend. There'll be lots of frantic WhatsApp messaging, trying to work out what is the least bad option facing Conservative MPs right now. As you say, finding that unity candidate, there's been a lot of names popping around, but not all of them can be Prime Minister. And Truss will probably stay until they can actually coalesce around that one person.
But they can't actually force her to go.
No, they can't force her to go, but I think that Truss probably feels that her position is actually politically untenable. I mean, a lot does hinge to some extent on what happens today with the markets in terms of whether she has days or perhaps weeks or perhaps months. I mean, she's brought in Jeremy Hunt to be Chancellor. Today will be the first full day of trading since those series of U-turns, since Kwasi Kwarteng being replaced. Hunt is seen as a fairly safe pair of hands. He does have a base of respect within the party. He's not particularly popular with the UK electorate necessarily.
Well, he's got no Treasury experience.
He's got absolutely no Treasury experience, that's quite right. But we have already started to see perhaps some positive reaction from the markets, but we're coming out of a very deep hole. I mean, sterling slumped 17%. The UK bond market remains very vulnerable.
Well, look, if you were to talk about it all dispassionately, you'd say let's get this fiscal medium-term plan out the way at the end of the month and then decide on the future of Liz Truss. But for many Conservatives, I suppose, within the party, the problem is that everything that she espoused, everything that she stood for, has been U-turned on now. And the question is if she is in office but not in power. Who's in charge here?
It's an interesting point. I mean, she is in such a weak position. Jeremy Hunt is in such a strong position over her. It doesn't really seem that she's in power. There isn't any order, really, over her party. You know, we've had 3 MPs go over the top yesterday and say that they want to see her go. I think we can be certain that more will come. As a fiscal event on the 31st of October on Halloween, the Halloween fiscal event, the headlines write themselves. It's difficult to see how that could provide anything that will actually enable her to stay in power. And also, let's remember, I mean, the direction that Hunt is now signalling, pausing tax cuts, raising taxes, cuts to public services. I mean, this is exactly counter to the platform that Truss ran on in the summer How can she really stay in power when the programme that her government is going to be delivering is completely counter to what she promised?
But of course, what a lot of Tory MPs are going to be asking is how can the Conservative Party stay in power if there is another change of leader?
Well, actually, I think that a change of leader is the only really politically feasible option that remains to them. It's a very narrow path and it may not pay off, but actually the chaos has already fed out from Downing Street and from number 11, and it makes much more sense now to replace Truss, try and get in a unity candidate who can project confidence, stability and unity, and at least try to some extent to rehabilitate the image of the party for the next general election. Limping on with Truss is not the way to electoral success.
Yeah, fair point, isn't it? Phoebe, really good to talk to you this morning. Thanks for your analysis. Let us know what you think this morning on that one. We've been talking about it all weekend. It just never stops. And I think that's the dilemma for the Prime Minister, isn't it? That it doesn't stop. You know, whatever she does, it's just not reassuring the party. Doesn't seem to be reassuring the electorate either. When you look at the latest polls, they're all looking extremely grim.
And it is just a question of, you know, if you were to be parachuted in there to try and sort all of this out, who would you choose? Who could unite all of the different factions? It just feels as though, more than ever, the Conservative Party is at loggerheads. How do you unite the Nadine Dorries, the Jacob Rees-Moggs, some of the right of the party with the more central members? And indeed, is Jeremy Hunt the right person for that? What's the question?
Well, I would say Jeremy Hunt as Prime Minister would be, frankly, ridiculous, wouldn't it? In the fact that when it came to the leadership election, he
crashed out of it. Yeah,
did he get
first
20
round.
votes
Yeah,
or something like that? It was, you know, so he was not getting any sort of traction from his colleagues on that. So if he then somehow ends up being parachuted into number 10, it makes the whole leadership thing a total farce.
But then if you go for a Rishi Sunak, who was more popular with colleagues, he's also deeply unpopular now with a lot of people who saw him as a traitor, betraying Boris Johnson. I just don't know who I would pick if I was trying to sort all of this out. It's a very difficult situation. You just don't really see where it ends. And as we said, the next 2 weeks will be very interesting, won't they, until this Halloween mini-budget of sorts. So let us know your thoughts this morning.
Well,
the usual ways.
Jeremy Hunt called it a proper budget.
Virtually, yeah.
Which is, I mean, what on earth does that mean? It's very strange times, I have to say. It's very strange times. If you've got any thoughts on that, if you know how to solve this problem, please get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, the latest protests from Just Stop Oil have seen campaigners block London's Park Lane as well as spray paint the front of Aston Martin's car showroom.
Now, that follows another protest in which two demonstrators threw tomato soup over Van Gogh's masterpiece, Sunflowers, at the National Gallery. It wasn't damaged, thankfully.
Well, in the wake of these disruptive demonstrations, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has outlined new plans to crack down on those protests as part of an updated public order bill. Well, joining us now from Just Stop Oil is their spokesperson, Samuel Jackson. Good morning to you, Samuel. Look, it's the age-old question that comes up time and again. Sorry, Samuel Johnson. When we talk about these sorts of protests, this civil disobedience, this kind of disruption, is that you risk alienating the very people who are most likely to support your cause.
Oh, well, good morning, Isabel. Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's so important. We need to stand up to this government. We're in a cost of living crisis. We're in a climate emergency, and the government is going completely the wrong direction. The International Energy Agency has said we need no new oil. The United Nations has said we need no new oil. We are saying we need no new oil, but the UK government is continuing with 100+ new oil infrastructures. That is a death sentence. That is basically robbing the children of the UK of the right to grow old. That's why people have stepped up into civil resistance, and that's why people are doing actions right now in the UK. We're in desperate times, and these are desperate people, and that's why we're here.
Well, look. A lot of people may disagree with what you're saying. A lot of people watching and listening may agree with you. However, explain to us, why is throwing tomato soup over a Van Gogh masterpiece, I mean, how does that help your cause? How does that help your message?
Well, that action has got the message worldwide. It's gone around the globe. It's been seen by like 50 million people. And the thing about that is everyone loves That painting is just, everyone knows it. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful painting. That painting is protected by glass. The people of the UK are not protected from the oil companies and the corrupt genocidal government. And that is a fact. That is why people have to step up into civil resistance.
Yeah, can I just say, I mean, it's using it, you've got to be very careful with language, haven't you, if you want to get people on board, because already you've said, you know, the next generation are going to be sort of, in effect, robbed of a long life. You talk about the government being genocidal. I mean, that just simply isn't true. You can't say the government is genocidal.
Stephen, this is happening now. This is happening now.
That absolutely belittles what people are going through where they do have genocidal governments.
No, last year, over 8,500 people died over winter because they couldn't afford to eat or heat. We're in a cost of living crisis and in a climate emergency. They're two sides of the same coin. I have a friend in Scotland, he's a paramedic.
The definition of genocide, because dying from not being able to heat or eat your home is definitely not genocide, just to clarify on that point. And when it comes to actual lives being lost, we've seen footage over the weekend of ambulances.
I have a friend, he has to go into people's homes.
May I
He has to go into people's homes, and they're dead on the sofa with the TV still on. These aren't old people. These are people who have died because they can't afford to heat.
With respect,
that's only going to get worse with climate emergency.
That is in itself a tragedy, but it's not a genocide, just to clarify. May I just come back to the point I was trying to make about ambulances, footage coming out over the weekend of ambulances being blocked by your protesters. These are people who need to get to hospital into blue light conditions, and that's being prevented by your own organisation. And so you're sitting there, you know, decrying people who are in power and that you are causing life and death situations yourselves.
We have a blue light policy. We let all emergency services through.
Well, that's not what the footage shows over the weekend.
But we let them all through. And this is deferring from the fact that there's a massive problem at the moment and the government is failing its people. It needs to act. We are subsidising the oil companies £326 million a week. We need to take that money. We need to insulate our homes. We need to insulate our homes.
So are you from Insulate Britain or are you all connected?
I'm from Just Stop Oil. But at the moment,
but I mean,
we saw it this summer, we had 40 degrees of heat. We've lost 30% of our wheat crop. We stand to lose 50% of our potato harvest. What's going to happen with that? You're going to get food insecurity, you're going to get inflation, people's savings will disappear, and you have people fighting for the last loaf of bread in Sainsbury's. That's what's going to happen. That's the reality of social collapse. We need to avoid it.
Yes, we do need to avoid it. And look, I mean, people wouldn't disagree with that. But I think there's got to be a compromise on that. I mean, we totally get saying, you know, we don't want to use any fossil fuels. We don't want to, you know, invest in producing any more fossil fuels. I understand that as a philosophy. But it
needs to happen as an action. That's the thing. Sorry to interrupt, but it needs to happen as an action. At the moment, fossil fuels, renewable energy is 9 times cheaper than fossil fuels.
Yes,
we've got 8 years worth of licensing. We need to transition. We're not saying stopping all tomorrow. We're saying make the transition today.
Yes, but the point is, you were also talking about people dying because they can't afford to heat their homes. Well, what we're certainly seeing at the moment is people looking for a short-term fix so that those people can afford to heat their homes. You see, I mean, what you are looking at is a medium to long-term change, which a lot of people would agree with you needs to happen. But we've also got to look at the immediate term, haven't we?
Well, that's the thing. But the new oil licences, they won't come into place for 15 to 20 years. This is not an answer to the problem of the cost of living at the moment and people freezing to death in their homes. We need to transition, and we need to do that. We need to do that now.
There is an element of hypocrisy in all of this, though, isn't there? I mean, watching that footage of the Aston Martin showroom being defaced, people wearing glasses, mass-produced from plastic, which is made from oil, backpack, mass-produced from nylon, made from oil, paint sprayer, mass-produced in China, using oil, the paint gloss, also made using oil. And on the subject of hypocrisy, I just wonder, what does the name Eileen Getty mean to you? Can you explain to our viewers who she is and how she made her fortune?
I don't know. I personally don't know about Eileen Getty, but I can tell you that the oil industry
she's
for the past 50 years,
in your organisation,
for the past 50 years, has made over £2 billion in profit every day. That's the reason all of our products and our whole life in society is gone around oil. That's why we're hypocrites. Apparently, we live in a society and we know what's happening with oil is killing us. If we're hypocrites for trying to stop that, we're hypocrites. But that's the reality of it all. That's the reality of it all.
Can I just ask, Eileen Getty, she funds don't just stop oil, doesn't she? And she lives off the profits of being an extremely wealthy oil family.
I don't know. Who funds GB News? Can you tell me that?
Who funds GB News?
Exactly. Who funds GB News?
Well, it's a company called All Perspectives.
Yeah, and where's that? Where's that from? Because you asked me where we're funded, so where are you funded from?
Yeah, we could invest.
We could
We've got a number of investors.
Yeah, we've got investors, so we could tell you. I don't know the names off the top of my head, but then
Are these investors that are funded by oil?
Pardon?
Are you invested from states that are funded by oil?
Oh, that I don't know.
Pass.
That I don't know, but I mean, Getty's a very big name, isn't it? I mean, that's the point Isabel's making.
She's a major funder, yeah.
I'll answer your question if you answer mine.
Well, I have to say, I haven't got the details.
Are you funded by all states? Are you funded by all states? Yes
no,
or
we're not funded by any states, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Look, I think we've kind of drawn a conclusion in all this.
I'll tell you what I would say to you, though. I'll tell you what I would say to you, though, Samuel. I'll tell you what I would say to you, Samuel, in all of this, is you come on and you get a comparatively aggressive interview, right? That's just, but that's
it's a passionate interview. We're in desperate times. It's passionate. If you feel if you're affected by the cost of living crisis, the climate emergency, come to Westminster every day at 11 o'clock. Come join us in civil resistance.
Listen to me a minute. The reason you end up getting an aggressive interview is because you're carrying out aggressive acts. It's not the way to properly get your message across to those people, because it's about converting people. The people who support you now would listen to you and go, yeah, he's making our point, he's standing up for us. But you need to convert people who currently aren't on side with you, don't you?
We are getting positive messages. The main thing is if the demand is reasonable. The demand is reasonable. It's needed what happen. If people believe in the demand, the actions, even though they disrupt people for a temporary time, the long-standing benefits of getting off oil are evident. Everyone knows what they are. We need to do it. And the truth is, it's not going to happen unless people stand up to our corrupt, genocidal government.
Many people would agree it needs to stop. They just question the means with which you do it. Look, it's been interesting talking to you anyway. Samuel Johnson, thank you so much, spokesperson for Just Stop Oil.
Yeah, your thoughts on that would be very welcome this morning. I just sort of think they're missing the point, really. Although I was talking to a professor yesterday who was saying, well, look, people do need to, it's like, how do you get your point across? Because he's tried to do it for 25 years in a sort of more normal way, if you like, and hasn't had a lot of traction. So perhaps it is all about generating headlines but a lot of people just say, well, it's just vandalism, isn't it?
Alienates. I think it just alienates people. A lot of people have sympathy. A lot of people want to do the right thing by the planet, by their future generations. But going around trashing things just makes you look like a yob. Let us know your views this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
It is 6:18. Let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines. And GB News understands that officers of the 1922 committee will meet later amid growing calls from Tory MPs for the PM to step down. The committee's executive can change the rules of leadership balloting and no confidence voting, which potentially could lead to a leadership challenge. It comes after 3 Tory MPs called for the Prime Minister to step down.
The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, says hundreds of police officers behaved disgracefully and should be kicked out of the force. His comments come after a new report found officers are getting away with breaking the law and committing misconduct. The Met's misconduct procedures have also been described as racist and misogynist.
The King will meet families from war-torn countries who've moved to Aberdeen today. It's part of a government scheme to resettle refugees in the city. The monarch will hear how Aberdeen City Council has supported people from Ukraine, Syria and Afghanistan, as well as hearing personal stories from families on their journey and how they've settled into the community.
Do you want to talk about chocolate quickly?
Oh,
you
go
a
on.
Chocolate fan?
Well, I do like a bit. I can't eat a lot of it because I'm type 1 diabetic. But I do like a bit of chocolate. But apparently, I shouldn't be keeping it in the fridge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a travesty. But there's a big household argument in my house. My husband likes the chocolate in the fridge. You like the chocolate in the fridge. I prefer it room temperature.
Well, I prefer it room temperature.
Right.
It just sort of gets kept in the fridge.
Right, OK, well, that makes sense. But then you have to remember to take it out before you eat it.
Which, of course,
I can't
never
do that.
No, I never.
Apparently, a third of us eats chocolate every day. I was quite shocked by that.
I was shocked by that.
I'm definitely
me.
not an everyday chocolate eater.
Yeah.
If we have chocolate in the house, it gets eaten straight away, so we just try not to buy it.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You've got to eat it at 11 o'clock in the morning. That's when it does its best work for you.
And that's because it contains caffeine. So if you have it in the evening, it could actually be a stimulant that keeps you awake at night. So that might be where I've been going wrong.
Maybe.
So I like a bit of chocolate before
So basically, eat chocolate at 18 degrees at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Should point out this is all from a survey by Galaxy.
They might have a vested interest there.
They may. But it's a nice thought,
Yes.
isn't it?
Look, after the break, we're going to be talking more about household appliances, what they actually cost you to run, which ones are the energy vampires. We'll be talking about that after the break. First, though, your all-important Monday forecast. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking windy across northern areas with showers. Elsewhere, prolonged sunny spells with rain soon clearing. Let's take a look at the details. So across the south and west, it will be dry with plenty of sunshine during the morning, although some high-level cloud will lead to slightly hazier skies at times. Any early rain will soon clear the south and east with plenty of sunshine developing. Southwesterly winds mostly light, top temperatures reaching 17 Celsius. Dry and windy across Wales with sunny spells, some cloudy, but maybe thick enough to give the odd light shower over high ground. Fine and dry with prolonged sunny spells for all during the morning, although skies may turn hazier at times, and winds will pick up during the morning with gustier conditions developing into the afternoon. Dry with prolonged sunny spells, particularly across the east of the area. It'll become windy across the region from late morning with gusts perhaps reaching 50 miles per hour, especially across high ground later. Windy with showers or longer spells of rain continuing to affect much of Scotland. The weather will improve a little across southern Scotland into the afternoon with some brighter spells developing. And across Northern Ireland, it will be very windy with coastal gales. Showers continue to affect western counties during the morning, but these should ease and become less frequent later. So a decent autumn day across much of England and Wales, but some gusty conditions with showers continuing elsewhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
.24 breaking news for you this
Yes,
morning, and
very
it's coming
interesting.
from the Treasury. Now, it's actually a sign, I think, of a little bit of panic, because there's been all this talk, hasn't there? Can the Prime Minister hang on until the what the new Chancellor called the proper budget on the 31st of October? The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, is going to make a statement later on today, in which, well, we're not getting the full medium-term fiscal plan, but he's bringing forward some measures from it today, apparently.
Yeah, which is really interesting. There was lots of speculation in the papers over the weekend about whether or not he was going to scrap or postpone that 1 penny cut to the basic rate of tax. It sounds like that might be one of the announcements. We saw the rise in corporation tax being scrapped over the weekend. Really interesting. Apparently he met with the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, and the head of the Debt Management Office last night to brief them on these plans, which I think is a really important message we're noticing coming out of Number 11 now, that they're working very much head-to-head. I think there was a quote that Andrew Bailey said it was a bit of a meeting of minds.
Meeting of minds.
It's a clear meeting of minds on the importance of stability at the moment. So that's interesting in itself.
He's been at Chequers all weekend with the Prime Minister. I mean, the sort of conclusion you have to draw from that is he's been telling her what's going to happen. Which you know, raises questions of its own. Anyway, he's going to make this statement today. He's then going to address the House of Commons this afternoon. But then we're being told he will deliver the full medium-term fiscal plan, along with the statement from the Office for Budget Responsibility.
Also really key, isn't it?
Which is absolutely key, on the 31st of October. So we're going to get some measures today, but not all. Yeah. So clearly they feel that they need to do something now to try to steady the markets.
That's exactly it, isn't it? They're obviously concerned that the markets were going to have a freak out this morning, but they didn't want to spook them again by saying we're announcing this without OBR consultations. They will basically announce it today, but don't worry, we'll still get the OBR to comment on it by the end of the month. Really interesting. Will this be enough to save the Truss administration? Full analysis throughout the day here on GB News.
Still to come, though, on today's programme. It's getting backlash before it's even aired. 6:45, we'll talk to showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield about the latest series of The Crown and why it is going to be the most controversial ever.
That's certainly good PR for them, all this, isn't it? Look, if you've seen the pictures of milk being poured all over the supermarket aisles, it's the work of the protest group Animal Rebellion, not to be confused with Just Stop Oil. We'll ask them what they're looking to achieve from the government at 7:15.
I mean, do you know, it just beggars belief a little bit for me when people do this. Anyway, if you want to get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Lots of you have about our Just Stop Oil interview. We'll read some of those in a minute. Now, as winter approaches, many of us will try to keep our houses warm. And despite the energy price guarantee being fixed at 34 pence per kilowatt hour, there is a great deal still of anxiety around the soaring price of our energy bills.
Yeah, but one way of beating the costs is to discover what they're now calling, rather sexily, vampire appliances.
Lurking in your cupboards.
So presumably that means stuff that we didn't really sort of think about, or don't think about, but it's sucking away all that electricity. Let's talk to energy consultant Catherine Porter. Morning, Catherine. I mean, what are we talking about here when it comes to these vampire appliances?
Good morning. We're talking about all that stuff that we leave plugged in, but we're not using. So the TV draws power when it's turned off. Printers use power when they're turned off. All chargers all use power when they're turned off. Your microwave uses power when it's turned off. So all these things where you have it plugged in and the plug socket's still on, even if the device itself is turned off or not connected, it can still be drawing power.
Very little power.
Yes, each device in itself is only drawing a little bit of power, but then it all adds up. I mean, lots of people now have many chargers. They leave their phones plugged in overnight, for example, and it doesn't really need overnight for charging. Lots of people keep their laptops and their computers plugged in all the time and leave tablets on charge a lot when they're not in use, and all of that draws unnecessary electricity.
Really seems to me as though there needs to be some innovation in this area because, I mean, what kind of world do we live in where we're expected to scrabble around plugging and unplugging our microwaves and making sure... I think of my mobile phone charger, it's behind the chest of drawers beside my bed. The idea of me getting in to turn it on and off, or my integrated microwave, I just have to live with the fact that it's sapping energy. Surely there's an area of innovation to be come up with here, given the crisis that we're in. Are there any smart ways of being able to sort that?
Well, there are. I mean, you can actually buy smart plugs that you connect to a phone and that will turn them on and off. That's not really my area of expertise, so I don't know how good they are and how much they save you. But I mean, the only way to really be sure that they're not drawing energy is to, physically unplug it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with smart plugs is, of course, that they themselves draw energy so you can turn them on and off remotely. So it probably takes more energy than just leaving your TV plugged in. What about the big things like washing machines and dishwashers, all that sort of thing? I mean, obviously people are now, making sure there's a full load before they put the washer on and a full load before they put the dishwasher on. But I mean, it's not always quite that simple, especially if you're running a busy family household.
No, that's right. I mean, the appliances that draw the most energy are tumble dryers, like fridge freezers, washing machines and dishwashers. So I think tumble dryers of those is probably the easiest one to manage without. There are other ways of drying clothes that don't involve using a tumble dryer. It's pretty much impossible to manage without your fridge freezer unless you're going to radically change your life. And then, dishwashers and washing machines, it's all about maybe using them a little bit differently. So filling up your dishwasher before running it, and with washing machines running on a lower temperature cycle, and then remembering that every so often you do need to run it at a higher temperature just to kill any bacteria that's got inside. When it comes to things like fridge freezers, it doesn't mean there's nothing you can do. One thing that actually applies to all appliances is to make sure they're clean. Defrost your freezer and clean behind your fridge freezer, and that will make sure that it's not having any sort of performance degradation.
I read that you're supposed to get behind your fridge and dust all of it off to make sure that it's energy efficient. But again, mine's integrated into a cupboard.
Yeah, but you can pull it out. Pull it out. Oh, she's so lazy, Catherine, at times with that housework. Terrible.
I am scrupulous and fastidious, I'll have you know. However, I'm not going to be yanking a fridge out the wall.
Oh, well, I don't know.
How are we supposed to be doing all this?
I think it's very sensible advice, Catherine. Thank you very much
Thanks,
indeed.
Catherine.
Well, it's literally a radiator on the back of your fridge.
I definitely can't access that.
And if they get dusty...
Someone needs to invent a dust sucker on the back of my fridge.
Do they?
They just need to invent all these things.
Yeah, that'll take energy.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Probably cost you more energy.
Oh, there could be a little access drawer at the back of the fridge. That would be good. So I could get in, behind it. But...
That's where all the gubbins is, darling.
Yeah, maybe. Well, the gubbins. That's where all the gubbins is. Look, we've got loads of emails. Let's quickly read some because, the inbox has just gone on fire after that interview with Just Stop Oil. Con says the public should then use this time to throw eggs, flour and pour soup over them. Don't know what that means.
I'm a bit tempted. Deb says, no way will I ever support these protesters. Why is it taking so long to sort them out? I think the problem with that is that you see them doing what they're doing and no one stops them.
Yes, exactly. The police officers letting the ambulance but get diverted was questionable. Yeah. Jackie says the trouble with these protests is they're so focused on their own opinions instead of working with people. How much did it cost to clean the windows?
Paul in Norfolk says, stop giving airtime to these idiots. They are vandals and a disgrace. But, Paul, I disagree with you on that. Not that I think they are vandals, frankly, but I think we do need to... The whole point is we need to hear what they're saying, if only so we can challenge them and say, well, you're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, you've got a platform.
But yeah, so I think...
Vandalising.
I don't think shutting... That would be cancelling them in a way, which we don't agree with. So it's about listening to all arguments, even if we disagree with them very strongly in some cases.
So keep your thoughts coming in and stay tuned our way for Animal Rebellion at 7:15. Expect it'll be a similar kind of interview.
Sort of. But you never know, after the break, Dawn Neeson and Oscar Reddrop will take us through this morning's papers.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, We're
on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
.35. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines this morning.
The Treasury says Chancellor Jeremy Hunt will make a statement this morning. He's been in talks with the Prime Minister this weekend, and he's set to fast forward some measures from the medium-term fiscal plan, which will be released in full at the end of the month. It said Mr Hunt met with the Bank of England Governor and the head of the Debt Management Office last night to brief them on his plans.
Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley says hundreds of police officers behave disgracefully and should be sacked. His comments come after a new report found officers are getting away with breaking the law and committing misconduct. The Met's misconduct procedures have also been described as racist and misogynist.
Ukraine's capital's been rocked by blasts this morning for the second time in a week. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko says several residential buildings in a central district in Kyiv have been damaged by kamikaze drones. He said a fire's broken out, but authorities are at the site. There's no word yet on whether there are any casualties.
Well, to take us through the papers and the latest psychodrama in Downing Street, former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and former special advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Reddrop. Morning to you both. I mean, it's just...
When the papers are out of date at 6:37, you know you're living through wild times.
Yeah. What do we make of this comment from the Treasury, Dawn?
Well, it was meant to be on Halloween, wasn't it? And the full statement is still going to be on Halloween. Well, basically, he's running the country, isn't he? Jeremy Hunt is running the country. He's just overruled everything the Prime Minister had said, rewritten all the Trussomics, and basically, well, as you say, it's utter madness. I mean, the one thing looking at the papers today is I would not want to be Liz Truss waking up this morning and looking at any of those front pages. I mean, the kindest one is actually the Daily Star, where she's compared to a lettuce.
Are they still running that?
Yeah.
Our lettuce camp. How's it looking? A bit weathered this morning.
It's looking limp.
It just feels out of control. This is the problem.
I mean, I think on a really human level, I just want to say this first. I have a great deal of sympathy for what the Prime Minister is going through now, because I think she's probably in a bit of state of shock as to how this is...
Well, you've been in Downing Street when the swirling derlish has started.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that will mean nothing to a lot of viewers, because they won't care about that whatsoever, because they'll be facing the chaos that is absolutely going on in their lives. There's these two levels of mess right now, which is why everything is so depressing at the moment and demoralising. The political kind of psychodrama mess that we're talking about, and then the real-world effect that has. But what I would say, just almost to kind of calm things down a bit, and maybe a tiny bit of balance almost, just in the defence of what's going on at the moment in government, is that the statement that's going to come out today from the Chancellor, I personally don't see as a sign of panic. I think he's identified the really glaring, obvious mistakes in that mini-budget. And I think his appointment and exactly why he's in that role now is to absolutely right those wrongs as quickly as possible.
But isn't it panic that they're doing it now to steady the markets? This is a market thing, isn't it?
No, absolutely, because that initial mini-budget was, as it turned out, pretty disastrous. But nonetheless, I think it takes a really, really, really decent politician to actually go, what are we waiting for? If we know what's wrong here, we know what needs to be done, let's just do it now.
Yeah, but everything that he's saying is wrong are all the things that Liz Truss espoused espoused. And the question remains, if he's ditching everything that Truss stood for, why is she still there? And the reason you chose this story in the front of the Times this morning about this rebellion, whilst he's been at Chequers this weekend, by all accounts talking to Andrew Bailey and the Debt Office as well, all these Conservatives have been plotting behind his back. Behind her back, sorry.
Behind her back, yeah, no, of course. So on that front, I'm almost trying to place myself in that building now. If I was with Liz and you're trying to find a road through this, if the announcement today from Jeremy Hunt, and you forget even his morning media round that he did over the weekend when he was first appointed, that did kind of settle nerves a bit. If this and the bond market's open 8 a.m, if today's events with the Chancellor settle things down a little bit, Liz is then meeting the One Nation Conservative group, which are absolutely the MPs and caucus of Tories who are baying for blood right now. So statement goes well today, she calms them down, and then she needs a public moment, because all the public have seen is a Prime Minister panicking and actually looking a little bit out of her depth. She needs a public moment where people can connect with her, she can connect with them, acknowledge mistakes and actually acknowledge we're on the right path. Although, as we've discussed, there are hundreds of MPs who quite clearly have no interest in...
I was going to say, I mean, the meeting, she had a meeting with 1922 last week, and that was, by all accounts, disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, the briefing that goes on off the back of that was completely disastrous. And just really quickly on this, I think the 1922 committee, it's really interesting because, and to people who aren't, obsessed with politics, they have all their kind of weird little rules in terms of how they can get rid of a Prime Minister. Ultimately, there aren't any rules, really. They can do what the hell they want. And actually, I think what they will be deciding is we need someone we can anoint. It's never going to the membership. That will cause problems in itself. And off the back of that, there will have to be an anointed one. Maybe we'll find a top two, and then they will agree as a top two that the one who comes out with the most votes amongst MPs drops out.
Meanwhile, Dawn, in the Telegraph,
Yes.
Penny Mordaunt is now publicly calling for unity behind the Prime Minister, which makes me think she's eyeing up the...
she's eyeing up, yeah. I mean, she's very much... She's written a piece, she hasn't given an interview, she's written a piece for the Telegraph today, which, as we all know, is very, very pro-Conservative Party. And she's damning Liz Truss with faint praise, isn't she, really? She's comparing Liz Truss's struggles to those faced by Winston Churchill. Obviously, he sort of
Really?
Went through... Well, exactly. And she's saying, we all need to get behind her and unify. Now, in my mind, this is like, the board of a football team. We have every confidence in the manager. We're backing the manager. And before you know it, the very next day, they are out. Now, Penny Mordaunt, obviously, as we know, ran for the job herself. There was discussion over the weekend about her and Rishi Sunak teaming up. And I think, given Sunak's already been turned down for a Prime Minister, rejected, then it would have to be Penny Mordaunt in the main job, wouldn't it?
Yeah, which he's not going to go for.
Well, I mean...
did you work on any of his campaigns or anything?
No, very much not. No, definitely not. I think Penny... I mean, again, Penny's a bit of a risk. Because there's a similar dynamic that was at play with Liz, is that, she seems, really competent. She seems like she can connect and a decent communicator.
Everyone was coming out saying she doesn't do the work.
But we don't really know. It just feels like a risk. And the other thing the Tories need to realise here is that I don't quite think it's sustainable for them to not go to the general public with a general election after appointing.
But the polls they're just not going to do that, are they? I mean, they just might as well just say, we're handing over...
But that's where the Labour Party will then... If they replace Liz Truss, whoever it is, all you will hear from the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats in the House of Parliament every single day is general election, general election, general election.
But is that why it's in terms of changing a leader, if that's an inevitability, and I agree with you, I think it is, it's about getting someone in who is going to mitigate the results of a general election.
Who would that be?
Yes, it is, but who is that person?
Boris Johnson?
Well, this is the debate everyone...
Well, it's funny you say that.
Everyone keeps coming back to.
Well, I mean...
Well, he's off to America, isn't he, to make money, setting up an office in New York, if the papers are to be believed.
I mean, just looking back rather than forward, it's obviously... I do slightly have my head in my hands when I kind of think, well, we could have kept Boris.
Yeah.
We could have kept Boris, guys. And I know for some people that felt like that wasn't sustainable either. But when you look what's followed...
Oh, I think everybody would agree. They'd rather have Boris at this point, wouldn't
well,
they?
I'd rather have the lettuce, to be honest with you. But, I mean, to a certain extent, it was Boris's behaviour. And we keep going, oh, it was just about a cake. It wasn't just about a cake. It was about far more than that. And it was Boris's behaviour that's kind of triggered where we are now. He's not blameless. Yeah, he's not blameless in this. I mean, there was a lot of disloyalty, but I think... For me, I mean, the way Liz Truss threw Kwasi Kwarteng literally under the bus and then reversed over him, I thought that was appalling. I mean, he was sacked for basically doing what she wanted.
You called it as well. I remember you called it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, I think anyone that can be that disloyal, I don't want running my bath, let alone my country. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, we've seen it, haven't we? The number of U-turns Liz Truss has done throughout her career, changing parties, changing her views on the monarchy, now changing view on... Trussonomics.
Well, exactly. And this isn't even political from my point of view. It's on a personal level. I just think her behaviour is appalling. And, as you mentioned, Isabel, that 9 minutes from hell press conference.
Oh, yes.
You watched her then, and it was like the very definition of rabbit caught in the headlights.
Well, she's. I mean, I hate to say it because I mean, this is where it does get sort of personal in a way, which isn't nice. But then she has put herself in that position. She just seems absolutely out of her depth.
Well, I think the real problem is, and we're almost falling into the trap of it, I have to admit. And this is the real tragedy: is that politicians at the moment, MPs, the media, are not actually being it because of all the mistakes and the absolute soap opera that is going on, are not able to talk about the real issues. And that has dragged on since...
Oh, the whole of this year.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely.
Literally since this show launched in January,
and you always
done nothing to talk about Conservative Party psychodrama.
And absolutely.
It's exhausting.
And you always have to remember that ultimately the mess that is going on in Westminster is completely ruining and destroying the airtime for the genuine issues and the actual mess that normal people care about. Normal people do not care about
and the solutions
politics
that the politicians have come up with. The good, this...
absolutely, like the energy.
Yes,
exactly.
That got completely overshadowed.
Which is why, I mean, just because we're running out of time, but why it presumably, I mean, a general election is going to take some time, isn't it? And that's at least another month out of the system where nothing happens.
At very least. And that no one is ever going to have a general election over the Christmas period, so it will be into the new year. And meanwhile, as we've already discussed endlessly, we can't pay our bills, we can't pay our mortgages, we can't afford to buy food, etc., etc. And meanwhile, they're just fighting like rats in a sack.
Yeah. I'd love it. If you think we're being disingenuous, get in touch. If you think because we do get people messaging saying, just let Liz get on with it, let her go. The problem is she just seems... It's like, she lost a grip of what's going on now.
It's her party that
it just seems out of control now. Which is what I think a lot of people are finding very disconcerting.
Yeah, very
Let us know what you think.
Time for one more story before we have to move on. Let's go for police reform, because it's a really big story, this report that's come out talking about corrupt, misogynist, racist, fraudulent police officers, hundreds of them within the Met Police.
Says the boss.
This is it's an absolutely shocking report, isn't it? I mean... This is only the half the report. It was commissioned after, obviously, the horrific rape and murder of Sarah Everard by a serving police officer. And this is only the pre-report. The full report is yet to come out. But the amount of misogyny and systemic racism in the force, in the Metropolitan Police Force, which is already in special measures in any case, isn't it? Well, there's one officer who's facing 11 claims, including sexual assault, harassment and domestic assault, who is still a serving officer. And that's just the tip of this iceberg. I mean, we think back to what happened to Sarah Everard. And the way, indeed, her vigil was policed afterwards.
Oh, it was terrible.
Well, the brutality that was involved there. Meanwhile, just stop oil, the police go and make them cups of tea.
I'll tell you what we need to be very careful of with this, I think, though, is not to demonise all police officers. Because even if you're talking of hundreds that need to go, it's still a very, very small minority. Most of the boys and girls in blue do an amazing job.
And Rowley has come out and said that. He said that whilst obviously I'm going to absolutely accept and bring forward sweeping reforms because of the absolute grimness of the findings,
He-
we do also have to remember, exactly to your point,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
there are a lot of
absolutely.
people who are just going out there.
I mean, to be fair to him, he admitted he was almost in tears reading this.
Yeah.
Some of the
Well, there we-
reports.
exactly.
Even if
there we
it's
go.
just one, it's too many. And it's, you know, it's thousands of them involved in... 1,263 were involved in 2 or more incidents.
It's frightening, Isabel. I mean, and they say sort of like 30 to 40 are, between 30 and 50 are sacked during the year for misconduct. But hundreds of them supposedly deserve to go.
Yeah.
As you say, but it's so important that the people out there on the beat, we can't tar everybody with the same.
No,
Many of them are struggling to do a very good job for us.
And they're very important.
Yeah.
Dawn, Oscar, thank you for going through the breaking news and indeed the papers with us this morning. More from you, I'm sure, in the next hour or so. But we're going to talk about all things royal now.
Well, sort of royal.
Yes, exactly.
At least, because the latest series of The Crown continues to spark fury as critics claim the Netflix programme portrays the royals in a negative light.
Well, the former Prime Minister John Major spoke over the weekend about scenes featuring the late Princess Diana before her death, calling it a barrel of nonsense. Well, let's speak to royal and showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield, who joins us now to tell us more. And I have to say, Kinsey, as an ardent lover of The Crown, I do feel disappointed if they are fiddling too much with the truth, because it just becomes, as John Major's described it, nonsense.
Right. He also called it damaging and malicious fiction. I don't know if you read about this, but there's allegedly a scene in the upcoming season where Dominic West, who's playing Prince Charles in the 90s, has a meeting with John Majors and suggests that he take over for Queen Elizabeth. So he's kind of hinting that he's ready to take the throne. And John Major says that never happened. That absolutely never happened. And I think that particular instance really is frustrating him. One of the Queen Mother's biographers actually came out and said that he was horrified by The Crown. So they're under a lot of scrutiny right now, and it doesn't even drop until November 9th.
I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Because if they're doing this in this series, where obviously people are paying a bit more attention to the facts because it's in our recent history, it beggars belief as to quite what they made up for the previous series.
Well, yes, and we were told throughout those, that this is a work of fiction, and people came out and said, please, will you add a disclaimer at the top? Because I really think where the issue is Americans watching this show. Earl Spencer has said that people will come visit him on his estate and try to quiz him on history lessons. And he's like, that's a scene from The Crown. That did not actually happen. So I know it frustrates a lot of people that were there and lived through it. And especially with Princess Diana, season 4 wasn't very flattering.
And, I sometimes do wonder how many of the royals watch it. And I imagine, talk about Americans, does Meghan Markle sometimes watch this and think this is history? And I also think of the boys. Seeing your mum that you lost, at 36 or whatever her age was, a really young mum, to see her with this, in front of the Daily Mail this morning, there she is, this absolute lookalike character. To see your mum in pictures again, having lost her like that. She's on the front of the Sun as well, I think. Really.
And the boys are in these upcoming seasons. Look, there's Harry you just showed a photo of Prince Harry and Prince William.
You see that?
So the boys,
unbelievable,
the boys
isn't
are
it?
in it now.
Yeah, that's the actress.
Yes.
I was looking at that thinking that was...
But a part of me wonders if Meghan Markle looks at this as karma. She wasn't able to tell her truth, and so the royal family has to deal with some of these nasty, storylines that aren't necessarily true. But I do believe that I've heard that Camilla, the Queen Consort, watches it, and she likes Emerald Fennell, who played her in season 3 and 4, and invited her to an event. So I do know that there are some members that watch it, and Camilla was quite kind about it, but we don't know what's coming for season 5.
Fennell was extraordinarily brilliant, wasn't she? Such a great actress. But you know what? If Meghan Markle is thinking it's a bit of karma, she should wait, because they're coming for her. They're going to make her part of the series at some point. So her day will come. I want to ask you about Ghislaine.
The writers aren't reading Valentine Lowe and Tom Bower's book when they're putting together that script.
They probably will. Can we ask you about Ghislaine Maxwell? She's been speaking over the weekend about her dear friend, Prince Andrew.
Yes, right. She said she felt sorry for her sweet friend, Prince Andrew. And she is claiming that this photo, I mean, this is the first time I think we've ever heard this really from Ghislaine. She's claiming that that photo with Prince Andrew and his victim is a fake. She doesn't explain how, and she doesn't explain why somebody would do that. But she says that that photo is not authentic. Also, who's doing her roots in jail? Because they're amazing. I just had to use eyeshadow on mine, and that was her recent mugshot. She's looking pretty good there in the slammer. But yeah, talking about her dear friend Prince Andrew, I think some people thought she was going to tattle on him or might say something salacious, but nope, she's staying in his corner.
I just wonder if he wants that.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it's not going to elicit any sympathy for him or for her, is it, really?
Absolutely not. I would want to distance myself on either side.
It's a difficult one. Look, Kinsey, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Need eyeshadow for your roots.
Oh, she does, obviously. She means, I mean, I don't mean that offensively, but clearly she thinks she does.
Yeah, well, looking fab always. Kinsey, thank you.
My roots are fine, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, actually, a silver fox coming through
Silver
there.
fox.
Yeah, it
What
works.
can you do?
Works for you.
I don't believe in dyeing it. Well, for men.
Yeah, I agree. I
'Cause
think you
it's
can
just
rock
like-
it and it looks great. Yeah.
You do see these fellas like with jet black hair
Yeah.
or whatever, and you just think, nah.
Yeah, I went
Pull-
through that phase.
pull the other
Came out
one.
the other side.
Pull the other one.
Oh, some views.
Some views, just very quickly. Talking about the Just Stop Oil, Adam says people are alienated by imbeciles acting illegally. Fair play to their spokesperson for coming on, though. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Pauline says, well done in attempting to get answers, but they are media trained and talk like pre-programmed bots to only shout down genuine dialogue.
Do you know what? I don't think he was media trained.
I don't think he was, otherwise he might have let us ask a question.
I've got to be honest. OK, coming up after the break, we're going to talk about the Truss turmoil. Is it the beginning of the end?
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking windy across northern areas with showers. Elsewhere, prolonged sunny spells with rain soon clearing. Let's take a look at the details. So across the south and west, it will be dry with plenty of sunshine during the morning, although some high-level cloud will lead to slightly hazier skies at times. Any early rain will soon clear the south and east with plenty of sunshine developing. Southwesterly winds mostly light, top temperatures reaching 17 Celsius. Dry and windy across Wales with sunny spells, some cloudy, but maybe thick enough to give the odd light shower over high ground. Fine and dry with prolonged sunny spells for all during the morning, although skies may turn hazier at times, and winds will pick up during the morning with gustier conditions developing into the afternoon. Dry with prolonged sunny spells, particularly across the east of the area. It'll become windy across the region from late morning with gusts perhaps reaching 50 miles per hour, especially across high ground later. Windy with showers or longer spells of rain continuing to affect much of Scotland. The weather will improve a little across southern Scotland into the afternoon with some brighter spells developing. And across Northern Ireland, it will be very windy with coastal gales. Showers continue to affect western counties during the morning, but these should ease and become less frequent later. So a decent autumn day across much of England and Wales, but some gusty conditions with showers continuing elsewhere.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
A new Chancellor takes control and announces a new fiscal plan to try to reassure the markets.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock, it's Monday the 17th of October. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel and Stephen.
Here's what's leading the news for you this morning, and the new Chancellor will bring forward measures from the medium-term fiscal plan today. That's 2 weeks ahead of schedule. It's being announced to reassure the markets as the pound makes gains. It's up about 0.7% this morning.
Hundreds of Met officers should be sacked for sexual misconduct, misogyny, racism and homophobia. That's according to the new police commissioner after a damning report revealed officers have been breaking the law and getting away with it.
Well, from damaging priceless art, or trying to at least, to pouring pints of milk in supermarket aisles. We're talking to people this hour behind Animal Rebellion to ask them if their protests are actually going too far.
More controversy for the Crown as the former Prime Minister John Major speaks out over the latest series. We'll be asking if it's right to include Princess Diana's final moments for entertainment purposes as it blurs the lines between fact and fiction.
We'd love to know what you think about any and all of that, quite frankly, this morning. You know how to get in touch. Drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So our top story this morning, and as always, fast-paced developments as the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has announced today that he will now be making a statement today, bringing forward measures from the medium-term fiscal plan to support fiscal sustainability.
Now, the announcement comes 2 weeks earlier than expected. It's not going to have all the details in it. We will still get that announcement on Halloween with more details, but we're going to get some today. And it could fast-track billions of pounds worth of tax and spending measures.
Well, it comes as Liz Truss faces yet more pressure this morning after 3 of her own MPs have publicly called on her now to resign.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's in Downing Street for us now. Who's running the show here, Tom? Number 10 and number 11?
Well, that is the question that is on everyone's lips, and I suppose it really depends who you ask. The Chancellor yesterday determined to say that the Prime Minister is still in charge, and yet he seems to have junked her entire economic strategy. Gone is the idea that we can borrow a little bit more over the next 3 years in order to get ourselves into a stronger growth situation. Gone is the line that the United Kingdom actually borrows less than all but one other major advanced economy in the world. The United Kingdom, of course, under the previous plans, was still scheduled to borrow less than America, than Canada, than Japan, than France, than Italy. And yet this has become a big change of tack. probably more due to the mood music than the specific policy. And yet, we're going to see some pretty seismic announcements later on today. First, a statement from the Chancellor, and then a statement from the Chancellor to the Commons. Two separate events. We're expecting the Commons event to take place at around 3:30 this afternoon, and that will mean that there will be many opportunities for members of Parliament to question the Chancellor in terms of answering that question you posed, but also many others. This was a surprise announcement this morning. It came into journalists' inbox at 6 a.m. It's important to note that's 2 hours before the bond markets open at 8. Clearly a big signal from the government trying to make sure that there isn't another big sell-off of government bonds by pension funds. Of course, the Bank of England's intervention ended last Friday, so this is now a big move from the Treasury to try and say that there's going to be more fiscal responsibility, that there will be fewer tax cuts. Indeed, we're expecting that the basic rate income tax cut will now be delayed. That's, I suppose, a saving to government or perhaps a cost to taxpayers of £5 billion. We're expecting perhaps some other measures as well, stripping out more and more of that mini budget. Now, that's a tricky measure, that 19 pence basic rate change, because of course that's a measure in the mini budget that the Labour Party supported. Where now will the Labour Party stand on this potential delay to that tax cut? Because to some extent it could be argued that at this present moment in time the Labour Party supports more elements of that mini budget than the Conservatives do.
Time to be alive. Tom, thank you very much for that analysis. Well, with us now in the studio is the political editor of the news website Tortoise, Kat Neal, and good morning to you. Look, with all of that in mind that Tom was talking about there, the potential jettisoning of the 1 pence reduction in the basic rate of tax, and we've also seen the corporation tax U-turn, and the other U-turn, there's so many of them, what was it? Of course, the top rate of tax reversal as well. There's virtually nothing left of Liz Truss's legacy. So why is she still holding the top office?
Well, I mean, I think the question is whether she actually is or whether it's really Jeremy Hunt that's in charge now. And, of course, what's going on behind the scenes. So we know that there was a meeting on Friday with members of the 1922 Executive Committee to discuss what to do next. And I've been told that over the weekend phones have been red hot with various MPs. Not all of them plotters, some of them trying to just work out where the land lies. But I think there is definitely a sense that things are moving at a pace now. And really, the question is whether what Jeremy Hunt is going to announce today is enough to sort of stop that.
You see, it's very difficult. Well, even if it is, right, even if it's enough to stabilise the markets and bring us a little that sort of sense of stability, we can't have a situation, can we, where number 10 is actually not in control, but number 11 is. I mean, it gives us a whole new idea of an unelected Prime Minister, doesn't it?
I mean, there's always tension between the two flats, between the two departments, and there's always sort of a slight sort of pulling in different directions. Of course, we saw that quite vividly with Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, where, you know, there was kind of a degree of wanting to spend more than perhaps the Chancellor was happy to. I think that, you know, the sort of reason that Jeremy Hunt has been brought in is clearly to try and send a message both to the markets and to the party internally that a sort of new hand sort of overseeing things. We'll see later today kind of exactly kind of how far that's going, but the impression that we're getting this morning is that it's sort of no more kind of salami slicing, actually kind of really going in a wholesale changes to the mini budget.
I mean, we don't live in a presidential country. You know, it's supposed to be a collegiate approach to governing. Does it really matter if she becomes a sort of token head of the government at this point, if that is a unifying option for them? Because, you know, quite frankly, to have a coronation of another unelected member to lead the country would be problematic for the Conservatives and would probably hand over the keys of power to the Labour Party. So they're trying to find the best path to remain in power in a collegiate way.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. But, I mean, look, the whole point of Liz Truss has been her economic vision, right? Trussonomics. She's not there because she's a polished performer. She's not there because she has great campaigning skills. She's not a sort of person that speaks to the people in the same way that Boris Johnson did. So why is she there at all? Trussonomics is dead. She's not going to lead the Tories to another great victory. And this is again, what Conservative MPs are now sort of asking themselves. It is the same calculation, I think, that they have been asking themselves for the last couple of weeks. Is it worse to get rid of yet another Prime Minister or to keep this sort of zombie Prime Minister in place and try and go into an election with her?
I mean, well, yes, but I mean, that presumably the thought process that would be, well, we would keep her for the next 2 years, which
in a long time.
Which seems just on. I mean, I hate to say it because there'll be people watching and listening going, well, you know, this is how it is, you know, but it seems untenable at the moment. There just doesn't seem to be any sense of control.
I think the consensus is when, not if, and the question is kind of how they do it and kind of who replaces her, which again is the question that we were sort of dealing with the whole Boris thing.
So
who? Yeah.
I mean, I'm asking, who do you think? Because, I mean, Ben Wallace seems to be a sort of unifying character, widely popular. But he didn't even put his hat in the ring for the leadership contest last time. He's not interested. Rishi Sunak's made it be known that he's sad about the direction of the country and that, you know, he's highly capable.
But, you know, San Francisco is calling.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, he's divisive, isn't he? It's seen by many people as having betrayed Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson also divisive. Where do they go? How do you unify this party?
This is precisely the problem. You have strong anyone but Rishi people still within the party, anyone but Boris people within the party. I think probably the sort of reason why Ben Wallace is kind of coming to the fore is because he doesn't have that kind of sort of kind of passionate and haters within the party. So, I think this is the problem. So, the kind of the next few days and over the weekend has been spent trying to work out who would come forward, because there cannot be another 6-week-long leadership contest that goes out to the members. The members are going to be furious that the person they chose is not being taken forward, not least because they're already angry about Boris being jettisoned. So there needs to be sort of a unity figure that people can get around. The question is whether that can actually happen.
I mean, they are. I mean, this is the problem. Whatever happens, they are alienating their own membership, and it seems pretty much alienating the country at the moment. And there's no getting away from that. Is a replacement just someone who is going to keep saying, I've been saying it all weekend, is it just about mitigating the losses when it comes to a general election?
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. The MPs that I speak to broadly seem to be pricing in the fact that they're not going to win next time, and that this is a case of how do we minimise the loss, aka how do I keep my seat? Not everyone feels like that. I was talking to someone at the Thursday morning rather, who was saying, anyone that says that we're going to be out is just wrong. There's a way in which we can still win on a small.
You only have to think back to 1992. Don't you, when everyone thought they were done for, and then, of course, they came back for another 5 years.
Yes, but how did they do that?
Well, yeah, to be honest, I can't remember. I was only 18 at the time.
Not with Trussonomics.
Well, not with Trussonomics, no. Kat, thank you. Stay there. We may come back to you in just a sec, actually.
Look, in the wake of the Chancellor's announcement this morning, the pound has made significant gains, rising around 0.7% to trade above $1.13.
Let's speak to the head of strategy from the Dutch banking company Rabobank, Jane Foley. Jane, good to see you this morning. What are you making of all of this?
Well, I mean, it's a relief that we are going to have an announcement this morning, which perhaps will give us a little bit more detail on what this government is going to do in terms of its budget. Now, clearly, that press conference that we had from Truss on Friday was a huge disappointment to the markets. It was 8 minutes long. We got nothing in terms of what else can this government do to really mitigate the pressure, not just on the gilts market, but also on sterling. So a bit of relief this morning, but the government still has a pretty steep hill to climb. If we look at the figures from that we had last week, we had speculation that they needed to really save 60 billion sterling in order to really reassure the market that it knows what it's doing in terms of fiscal discipline, and that's quite a big steep hill to climb. So a bit of relief this morning, but of course we're all waiting what those details and what the announcement this morning will bring.
Of course, we know that famously the markets really like uncertainty. Does Jeremy Hunt, who's acting swiftly, doing the media rounds, does he represent enough certainty, or does the very fact that Liz Truss, who espoused so many of these policies that have caused so many problems, the fact that she remains the Prime Minister, is that still problematic for certainty in the markets?
I think it probably is. I mean, I would guess that maybe if Truss were to go, then Sterling would probably rally, because it would remove a Prime Minister that has absolutely no credibility and really is now governing without any particular policies in mind. As you've been discussing, Trussonomics really is dead. So there is a lot more credibility, of course, now for the new Chancellor. For Hunt, he's very respected. He's obviously been around in a senior position for a very long time, and quite clearly just the action of bringing forward some outline in terms of what his policies are going to be to this morning suggests that he understands how markets work, how markets think. Because if we had to wait until October the 31st, that's a very long time in terms of a market dateline. That would probably be too late, and that would just be inviting a lot more speculative activity, a lot more volatility. So bringing something forward suggests to the market that perhaps he sort of understands how investors think. So that is certainly a good sign.
There is still going to be uncertainty, isn't there? I mean, look at one of the biggest things in the mini-budget, which, of course, no one talks about, which is the energy price freeze. And we just don't know, because of the nature of the markets when it comes to oil and gas, actually how much that is going to cost.
It's going to cost a lot. I think we understand that. And that's quite interesting, because obviously we've got other countries in Europe doing similar sorts of, or coming through with similar sorts of policies to try and protect households from this huge increase in gas prices predominantly. Now, I think as far as investors are concerned, maybe that would have been acceptable in terms of if that is just what Liz Truss did. But it's the funding of that. Many other European governments, of course, have gone for windfall taxes. She thought she could get away with unfunded cuts here, and that's something which the market just couldn't tolerate. On top of just the whole idea of Trussonomics, this trickle-down policy was not something which the market thought was the right time to do that.
And just finally, in the statement that was released by Number 11 this morning about what the Chancellor is going to be announcing today, very careful language about bringing the Bank of England with them, the Debt Management Office as well, and signalling that the OBR very much included in all of their thinking. How important and significant is that, and how much of a departure is that from what we've seen in recent weeks?
That, quite frankly, is what the government should have done on September the 23rd. We should have had the forecast from the OBR. We should have had this perception that the Bank of England were on board, because what Trussonomics effectively did was put them on a collision course with the Bank of England. What the Bank of England has to do now, what it's mandated to do, is get inflation down. Now, how monetary policy works is taking away demand. That's how it can work. It cannot increase the supply, for instance, of gas. And suddenly you had a government doing exactly the opposite, trying to stimulate demand. And that, of course, just meant that the market assumed interest rates would have to go up even higher, and that's what's caused a lot of the issues in our mortgage markets and the pricing of new mortgages. So we need the government, or we need the perception to know that the government is working with the Bank of England, not against them, and the market needs the reassurances of those financial forecasts from the Office of Budgetary Responsibility.
OK, Jane, thank you very much indeed. Just very briefly to Kat Neelan from Tortoise. If the markets respond well to this today, are we going to be talking an entirely different story tomorrow?
I shouldn't think so.
No. Fair enough. It's a fair point, well made. Kat Neelan, thank you very much indeed.
Right, the time is 7:17. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines this hour. And as we've been discussing, the Treasury says the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, will make a statement today after talks with the Prime Minister over the weekend. Mr Hunt is set to fast-forward some measures from the medium-term fiscal plan, which will be released in full at the end of the month. It says the Chancellor met with the Bank of England Governor and the head of the Debt Management Office last night to brief them on the plans.
Ukraine's capital has been rocked by blasts this morning for the second time in a week. The mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, says several residential buildings in Kyiv have been damaged by what they're calling kamikaze drones. He said a fire has broken out, we can see from the pictures, but authorities are on site. No word yet on casualties.
The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, says hundreds of police officers behaved disgracefully and should be kicked out of the force. His comments come after a new report found officers are getting away with breaking the law and committing misconduct. The Met's procedures have also been described as racist and misogynistic.
Well, had you heard before this morning of animal rebellion? I've got to be honest, I hadn't. But anyway, they're protesters, as you may have gathered, and they've been pouring milk on dairy products in shops across the country to highlight how farmers should prepare to transition to a plant-based food system.
Well, in the wake of these disruptive demonstrations, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has outlined new plans to crack down on these protests as part of the Public Order Bill.
Well, joining us now from Animal Rebellion is their spokesperson, Nathan McGovern. Nathan, morning to you. I mean, look, is this what this is all about? Do you know what? I've been a vegetarian for about 43 years now, and I'd never heard of you. So is this just about gaining some publicity?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the show, Isabel and Stephen. I'm hoping you're much of a pleasure to talk to us, Gloria and Mark, were last week. And what I'd say is, this is, beyond awareness. Everyone knows we're in a climate and ecological emergency. Everyone's aware of the cost of living crisis. It's about providing solutions to all of those, supporting farmers into a plant-based future, farmers that have been in a cost of living crisis for longer than the rest of us, and seeing, a plant-based future is a win-win for everyone.
Is it always better for the planet, though? And I think of people, turning to use avocados or whatever it might be, and there's lots of unsustainable practices that goes on in plant-based diets as well. It's not necessarily the fix-all that you'd have us believe, is it?
Well, I guess what you'd be referring to there are just like some micro kind of picked things. But, if we look across the board, all we need to do is look at an Oxford study. I'm sure both of you highly respect academics from the University of Oxford. 2018, the most comprehensive study of food production history, that really conclusively concluded that the switch to a plant-based food system is better for the planet in every way imaginable. We know we're talking about a 76% reduction in global farmland that could be rewilded.
Look, you may be making a very good point, and what the academics say, we can look at and debate. But, I mean, look... we've lost him. He's gone. Oh, what a shame.
Terribly polite.
He was very polite. And look, that's fine. They make a point. I'm not a vegan, but as I say, I've been a vegetarian for a very long time. But if you want to make a point...
Don't do it like that.
I mean, this is surely criminal.
It's awful.
I mean, what do they think they're doing? This is what people have got a problem with. Pouring milk all over a supermarket. And as he rightly says... we've got him back, I think. Nathan, sorry, that line dropped out. He's not been technically cleared. We just have to hang out. I tell you what, we'll let him go.
Yes.
We'll let him go, because otherwise it gets complicated. But when there's a cost of living crisis, how is wasting food that some people would be desperate for a good thing?
Well, exactly. There's famine in Somalia, there's famine in the Yemen, and to see stuff like that, horrendous. And it does always beg the question, we live in a democracy. We live in a country where if you believe strongly about something, you stand on a platform and you go into politics. You don't go around defacing the country, chucking soup if you're a Stop the Oil Coalition, or chucking milk around in Harrods if you're anti-farming.
Except, someone I talked to yesterday who's a professor and does not engage in this sort of thing, but was saying, well, we've tried the talking, nobody listens. So, how else do we get the headlines? How else do we get the spots on a programme like this?
Well, then we live in an anarchy, don't we? If everybody that wants to have their message put across decides to take to civil disobedience and this kind of behaviour, what kind of country will we live in? We live in a country that should prioritise law and order and should prioritise the proper democratic process of debate and legal paths. It just has to be. Otherwise, it's an anarchy.
I just think that and they may well make some very good points, but we need to talk about it sensibly. It's a shame that we lost that connection with Nathan. It's not stable enough to go back to him, actually.
Let's read a few of the views, shall we, Stephen? This was actually about the interview we did last hour with Just Stop Oil. But Vaughan saying, if I want to make a protest, would they be happy for me to go to their homes and throw milk and paint over their carpets?
Well, No, I mean, they wouldn't, would they? Mark in Norfolk says, I think all of these protesters who block roads, damage other people's property and things like that should be sent immediately to jail.
Yeah, Colin says, I'm sick of these protesters gluing themselves, throwing milk and paint over buildings. They're a disgrace. But, interestingly, this is where he levels his blame. Come on, police, get a grip. Lock them up. And a lot of people, certainly on social media, seem to be seeing the police as complicit in a lot of this. And whether or not Suella Braverman and her point very much, actually, I have to say, cross-party support this. The Mayor of London also on board, of course, the Labour, Sadiq Khan, Labour Mayor, saying very much we need to tighten the rules around this kind of protest because it just can't be allowed to go on.
Well, no, well, I don't think it's even about stopping it, but it's about facing the consequences of it. So if people are doing this, you should then be arrested. I mean, Paula in Leicester says, I'm appalled by the scenes from the weekend. Tell the poor lady who's struggling to feed her kids while they throw milk all over the floor. Yes, we have to change, but instead of doing these acts that just disgust most people, do something meaningful. Have a voice, become an MP, a councillor, make a difference that can be heard.
Hear, hear.
So, let us know what you think. And it's, you know, it's right that we listen and talk to people like Nathan. I just wish to go about it in a different way, or at least face the consequences of what they do.
Let us know your thoughts. After the break, we'll be talking to the very lovely Paul Coit, but first of all, here is your Monday forecast. It's a bit damp out there. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking windy across northern areas with showers. Elsewhere, prolonged sunny spells with rain soon clearing. Let's take a look at the details. So across the south and west, it will be dry with plenty of sunshine during the morning, although some high-level cloud will lead to slightly hazier skies at times. Any early rain will soon clear the south and east with plenty of sunshine developing. Southwesterly winds mostly light, top temperatures reaching 17 Celsius. Dry and windy across Wales with sunny spells, some cloudy, but maybe thick enough to give the odd light shower over high ground. Fine and dry with prolonged sunny spells for all during the morning, although skies may turn hazier at times, and winds will pick up during the morning with gustier conditions developing into the afternoon. Dry with prolonged sunny spells, particularly across the east of the area. It'll become windy across the region from late morning with gusts perhaps reaching 50 miles per hour, especially across high ground later. Windy with showers or longer spells of rain continuing to affect much of Scotland. The weather will improve a little across southern Scotland into the afternoon with some brighter spells developing. And across Northern Ireland, it will be very windy with coastal gales. Showers continue to affect western counties during the morning, but these should ease and become less frequent later. So a decent autumn day across much of England and Wales, but some gusty conditions with showers continuing elsewhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back at 7:28. Still to come on the show this morning.
She's got a cup of tea. She's happy.
I'm happy. Actually, I've got a bit hooked on this raspberry stuff that you've introduced me to last week.
Very berry.
Having never liked it in my life, I'm now sort of 3 per morning.
Yeah, which is interesting because you're getting purple fingers from drinking that, which is interesting because England footballer Jack Grealish has got green fingers.
There you go.
He's bought a new pad, apparently, and there's allegedly...
He hasn't been. He's got a gardener to do it, hasn't
allegedly. I mean, I don't know why he should be allegedly growing your own
The
vegetables.
allegations is that he grew some carrots.
Anyway, we're talking to the king of vegetables, Gerald Stratford, to find out how you grow your own.
At 20 past, we'll be speaking to former Detective Superintendent about the latest damning Met Police report that has found the internal disciplinary system as racist and misogynist.
If you want to get in touch, please do this morning. Send us something jolly as well. There's a lot
Yes, make us laugh,
there's a bit of fury coming through about these protesters, understandably so. If you've got anything nice to say, just about anything. You know, anything, I'd love to hear from you very, very much. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Paul Coyte always makes us smile. He's joining us now to talk about all the biggest sports stories. Good morning.
Hello.
I hope you had a lovely sport-filled weekend.
I did have a lovely sport-filled weekend, and I hope you had a lovely sport-filled weekend as well.
I did.
And also, it's lovely that you've got that drink there, because if you do spill it, then you can't see it when it lands on the dress. Is that what you do?
Oh, right. I've dressed like a giant raspberry to match my tea.
It looks lovely.
Yeah,
That's a fair point, actually.
Well,
right, Liverpool.
Can we talk Man City
Speaking
Liverpool?
Reds.
Because that was the big match.
It was Liverpool and Manchester City. Man City just can't seem to win at Anfield. I think out of 60 possible points over the years, they've only managed to get 9 points from there. And Pep Guardiola was extremely frustrated, and he was creating the fact that they had a goal disallowed. He thought it was wrong because the referee quite basically has said that we're going to let play continue. This is something that's coming at the start of the Premier League this year. It's too much blowing up for different, whether it be assumed fouls or fouls. Let's just let play continue and go on. So he's saying, well, that was going on during the entire game. Why didn't it happen when there was a situation where Erling Haaland actually committed a foul? Well, it was questionable whether it was, a bit of a shirt tug, and then Man City scored. So he's very unhappy about that.
Shame about Erling Haaland, because he seems to score goals even when he's not on the pitch.
This is the thing with Erling Haaland. He does. All he has to do is look at the ball, and the ball goes to the back of the net. He didn't have any luck yesterday, and this is the amazing thing. Erling Haaland doesn't score was the headline above the fact that Liverpool actually go and beat Manchester City. And let's be honest, Liverpool have not been good this season. So when it comes to a huge game like this, some people are thinking, well, Man City, by far the best team in the country, they'll wipe the floor with them, and it wasn't the case. And everything about Liverpool that we'd seen before, it all came together. They played very well. They scored an excellent goal with Mo Salah, and even Jurgen Klopp got sent off at the end for creating and saying that it was just a decision, and then he was jumping up and down and shouting.
Very excitable.
He's a very excitable man, and he says for a man of his age of 55 that he shouldn't behave that way. He kind of admitted that at the end, but he does get very excited, so he got a red card. But it was a great game. It was very exciting.
What about the Gunners? I like to talk about the Gunners.
I know you like to talk about the Gunners, and
Still on top.
They are still on top. And that with my Spurs leanings, it's kind of difficult for me to talk about Arsenal still on top of the Premier League. But deserved again. They go away to Leeds. They managed to win. Leeds miss a penalty. There was a questionable possible penalty right at the end, and a red card as well, which was rescinded. But they continue. They've won every one but one of their games so far. So some Arsenal fans are talking about the possibility of winning the Premier League, but there is a long way to go.
He says with a smile.
Right, no, just a knowing, patronising, sort of raised eyebrow coming from a Spurs fan that haven't won it since 1961. But yeah, they're doing absolutely fine. They're doing everything they need to do, and Mikel Arteta was very pleased with the way they played, and so they should, because they're winning. They're continuing to.
A few draws to discuss as well. Man United, Newcastle 0-0.
Yeah,
West Ham 1-1.
I mean, when you get a 0-0, there's not really a lot to talk about, is there? Manchester United and it's missed opportunities. Cristiano Ronaldo was taken off halfway through the game, threw a bit of a strop, so he wasn't very happy. There we are. Look at him, very unhappy there. So that's not actually them pointing at the referee going, look, Cristiano Ronaldo was taken off during the game. But he wasn't very happy. Southampton, West Ham, another game. Declan Rice scored a very good goal. Southampton... David Moyes was not happy about Southampton's goal and said the referee should go to Specsavers because there was a situation where Jarrod Bowen was impeded by the referee. So if that happens during a game, then it's supposed to be a drop ball and continue, but he just played on, and then Southampton go and score. So they were very unhappy about that. And one more, and that was Aston Villa at home to Chelsea. Chelsea won 2-0. A couple of Mason Mount goals, and Steven Gerrard. Not going too well for him. Not going too well for him. Continues, although they did play better, but still not too well for him. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell from yesterday. It was a very busy day in the Premier League yesterday.
Can we talk money? Because
again?
You owe me a tenner. What's going on? What's going on with rugby? Because they're being accused of living beyond their means.
Well, they are. I mean, this has been discussed for quite some time. The rugby union. It's almost as if the money that is being paid out to players and the money that is around, it's almost like it's running like the Premier League, but without the finances of the Premier League. And this is the huge worry. There we are. There's Wasps. Wasps, one of the great. We spoke about them last week. Yeah. One of the great teams of rugby union. They've been going since the 1860s. You know, from London, and then they moved up to Coventry, and they've gone into receivership. And I was speaking to James Haskell about this actually on Friday. Not that I'm dropping names, but he's very unhappy. He's had a love-hate relationship with his club. Former captain there. And he said the way that they were running it was very, very bad. He was at Wasps, yeah. And it's just not good. And Wasps look like there's a possibility they could disappear. We've already lost Worcester as well. And the way that the rugby union, the club situation is running is that there is money in some parts of the game and some clubs, but these are cash-rich owners that can actually afford to do it. But to actually run the club as a business, just as a proper business and actually keep going is very difficult because the amount of money they're paying players, there's not enough money that's coming into the clubs. So Bill Sweeney, who's the RFU chief executive, has said that it's broken, the English game, and something has to change. And really, the RFU are the ones that are going to have to do something about it because they oversee everything. So it is a worry, though, for rugby. Oh, yeah. You know, you've got the international game. It looks great, but further down the pyramid, that's where the worry is.
Yeah, and that's where all the talent comes through.
Correct.
Yeah,
of course it is.
It's really sad.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope Bill can sort it. Good stuff. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get a chance to tell you about Hull and Birmingham.
I don't know if we've got time.
Go on, just very quickly. Do it in 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Hull and Birmingham, supposed to play, game delayed by 20 minutes because the goals were too big. So they actually had to saw off the posts to make the goals regulation size. Sometimes help if you've got a bigger goal to shoot out, but it was spotted, so that's been cut off.
You think they'd notice, wouldn't you, before the, you know?
You kind of would, wouldn't you?
But there you go.
There you go, there it is. Look, they're actually cutting those things down to size.
There you
score.
go.
Look at that, they have to measure it and everything. There we are.
It's precision sport.
It is got to be exactly 8 feet tall. 8 feet, 2 inches, too big, and they had to saw them in half. There you go.
Not quite in half, but there you get your point. Paul, thanks very much indeed. Coming up next, we're going to take you through the papers with Dawn Neeson and Oscar Reddrop.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. It's just gone 7:39. Time to go through the papers now with the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, who's got a highlighter and avidly highlighting away.
The same colour as your outfit.
About your jacket. And we've also got the former special advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Reddrop, this morning with us to speculate about what on earth is going on behind the doors of Downing Street today. First of all, before we get into the papers, because, I mean, they were out of date by 6:30 this morning, some reaction from both of you to that breaking news that the Chancellor will be bringing forward many of his medium-term fiscal plan announcements to this morning. Oscar, does this smack of desperation?
I don't actually necessarily... I mean, desperation in terms of potentially the Prime Minister's future, but in terms of just absolutely analysing it in a decision on its own terms, I think it's really smart. I think it's exactly why Jeremy Hunt has been made Chancellor, because it was glaringly obvious the issues the markets had with that mini-budget. Feels like 100 years ago, but 2 weeks ago, and he's absolutely identified those problems, and he's sat around with advisors at Chequers with the Prime Minister and gone, look, if we know what the problem is, let's just get on and solve it. And it's really, really interesting. And I thought Tom Harwood's report that you did at the top of the hour was really interesting and spot on. We are now seeing a complete... I mean, I know U-turn gets thrown around the whole time, but it's kind of more than that. It's
collapse,
It's complete collapse, and it's really interesting because and Jeremy Hunt was obviously part of that government, but we're looking at more austerity policy. Every single department will be asked to absolutely scrimp and save on every single penny and pound. And actually what that will result... There'll be more political fallout as a result of that. Defence spending, for example. Do you think Ben Wallace is going to be happy with being told that...
Well, exactly.
So it's...
And the context of austerity was totally different in terms of the cost to ordinary people's lives. I mean, we already know that the NHS is on its knees.
Yeah.
We know that inflation is up. We know that the cost of living crisis is spiralling. That, in the context of governmental cuts, which will affect services, is scary, isn't it, Dawn? And just your reaction then to what you think this signal is this morning. Is this wise, as Oscar suggests, that this will, be preempting any panic in the markets at 8 o'clock? Or is this, as Labour have been saying this morning, evidence of panic?
I think it's 6 of one, half dozen other. I think it will stabilise the markets. I think, mind you, anything at the moment would stabilise the markets, to be honest with you. But I do also think there is a hint of panic here as well, and they do realise that they do have to do something. But I mean, Hunt has just come in and reversed pretty much everything Truss and Kwarteng did. But the manifesto he is now saying he wants to bring in as far as tax is concerned is the polar opposite of what the Conservative Party were actually elected in on in 2019. So they are reversing almost all their original... I appreciate a lot has changed with the pandemic and Ukraine, etc., but they're actually reversing almost the 13 key policies that they were elected on in that landslide victory back in 2019.
So general election then?
Well, manifestos are not a promise, though, are they? They are subject to change based on circumstances.
Yeah, I know terms and conditions apply, and I know, but I mean, it's a general election. I mean, another 2 months of chaos.
Which is interesting because the Sun, Oscar, they've got the supporters out saying, if you sack the Prime Minister, you're going to be wiped out at a general election.
Yeah, and I think that would be the current state of play, that's for sure. I mean, and I'm sure that's what Number 10 and the Prime Minister will be briefing to MPs and Cabinet Ministers, saying, if you get rid of me, ultimately, that means a general election's coming down the track, and we all know what will happen then.
But does it... Sorry, Oscar, you understand it more than I do. Does it technically mean they have to have a general election?
No, they don't. But the political pressure I think would be complete. Exactly right, Stephen. Exactly right. I do think what we're seeing with this melodrama at the moment, just quickly going back to that, the Conservative Party is having a bit of an identity crisis right now.
A bit? Someone was describing it as a death cult over the weekend. The stats, 4 Prime Ministers in 6 years, 4 Chancellors in 4 months.
Yeah, it does not know who it's speaking to. It doesn't know who it's speaking for, and it doesn't know where it needs to go. And I know everyone watching TV will be going, oh, we used to work for him, so of course he's saying this. But whatever you think of Boris Johnson, he had the personality, and he gave the party and the government a brand and a direction. And I do think that is...
The trouble is, you do wonder about common sense in all this. I mean, in The Sun, Matt Hancock is saying, to stay in position, Liz Truss needs to, reshuffle the cabinet.
Why Matt Hancock saying that?
But if there was a major cabinet reshuffle now, that's as destabilising, actually, as anything else, isn't it?
Completely. And that's why I think the parliamentary party and those poor MPs, I know the narrative is often, they're out for blood and they're conniving, the death cult, but what ultimately they are reflecting is their constituents, the people watching TV now who sat at home who are absolutely fuming about what is going on. And that's all those MPs when they go down to Westminster and are conspiring, and that's all they're reflecting, because their email inboxes are just full with, quite rightly, very angry people.
They're full of people saying, and you'll know this as well as I do, saying, bring back Boris. That's what the email inboxes...
that one, Dawn.
That's what the inboxes are saying, even to MPs who were quite glad to see him go.
Well, I suspect they probably are. I mean, and there is nothing to stop Boris coming back. I mean, it's possible, isn't it, Oscar? I mean, it's not impossible for that to happen. And it's like, and Nadine Dorries, they're 33 points down, and she was Boris's biggest backer. 33 points down in the polls at the moment, the Conservative Party. Nadine Dorries saying, we need a general election. That's like literally a turkey voting for Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what's the alternative, Oscar? I mean, you're saying that if they sack the Prime Minister, they make way for an election wipeout, but would we just leave a zombie Prime Minister in power with Jeremy Hunt calling the shots for the next 2 years?
I mean, maybe the slightly unfashionable thing to say at the moment is, I think the ideal, and I don't know if it's possible, the ideal scenario is that Jeremy Hunt comes in, does a really, I think as he's doing so far, a really proactive, calming job, and that actually... the Prime Minister is allowed a bit of time to see if she can recover, both politically within the party and in terms of the wider public. And there is a huge job for her to do that. But ideally, that would be the scenario that we want. But I'm not saying that's possible or realistic.
But let's be possible and realistic from both of you then. Can she last till the end of the week? Can she last until the statement on the 31st? Can she last till Christmas? Dawn?
I personally don't... Look, I want stability. I want this infighting to stop. I want the government, whoever is leading it, to concentrate on what everybody out there watching and listening to us now is going through, and we're all panicking while they're fighting. So I don't see how she can last this one out. And on a personal level, I was deeply worried by her behaviour at that horrendous press conference on Friday, wasn't it?
I mean, that was extraordinary, I have to say. Just the way she looked into the, I call it the audience, the assorted journalists looking for a friendly face and sort of actually verbally... I mean, Boris would never have commanded that kind of lack of authority.
I know, but Boris... I mean, it's really interesting, actually, what Boris... I mean, we had to do quite a few of those press conferences, if you think back to Sue Gray, for example. And what Boris did, he stood there for an hour.
Yeah.
He answered every single question from every single journalist, giving his pound of flesh, if you will, showing that contrition and humility. That's not just important for the viewers and the media and journalists, but it's also important for MPs to see, so they can see their Prime Minister is willing to look people in the eye and take things on the chin. And there was an opportunity missed, of course.
And it's having the X factor, isn't it? To quote a popular show, you know, you've got to have that something that makes you a leader.
You have to. I mean, it's of course it's not all about personality. Well, you do suspect that a lot of people did vote for the Conservatives in 2019 because of Boris Johnson, rather than the policies. It's not about that. But you know, we're sort of like saying it's like the X-Factor. It's like a reality TV show from hell.
Yeah.
But these are our lives that are at stake.
Yeah. Well, look, interesting hearing this rare rebuke coming in from Washington.
Oh gosh.
President Biden, who's managed to put his marbles in for a few minutes, has come out and sorry, but you know, he's come out and said that Truss's plan was a mistake, and you just wonder, has this pushed the special relationship further apart?
This is absolutely unheard of. I can't remember the last time an American president openly criticised not just the policy, but also...
Well, the leader, yeah.
The leader.
I mean, the nearest thing we got was Obama, wasn't he, saying, you know, about Brexit, the Brexit...
Yeah, I mean, but that wasn't as cut and dried as this. I mean, you know, Liz Truss and Biden meet next month, if she's still around, at the United Nations General Assembly, and that's going to be an interesting meeting. He's actually... I mean, the picture to go with it is hilarious. He's in an ice cream shop in Oregon, and he's asked what he thinks about the UK's economy. And, you know, and he's like saying, helping the wealthy was a mistake, and I'm not the only one that thinks that. And it's like... And it's standing there eating an ice cream, and as you say, he's put his marbles back in just for long enough to make this comment. And I'm just like, you know, I don't want to be mean, obviously. He's elderly and, you know, and he's not, I don't think, in good health. But, I mean, when Biden is coming out and criticising what's going on in this country, you do have to ask yourself... what is happening and what we can do to stop it, more importantly.
It's just that general feeling of being in free fall, which I think is what is... I mean, I find it slightly panicky.
Yes.
I do. It's just that free fall situation.
That's a really interesting point, and it's actually quite a serious point, isn't it? You know, politics can seem like a bit of a game, a bit of a soap opera that I think sometimes we kind of love to hate a little bit, and, you know, we have a little natter. But what you've just said there, Stephen, is so probably reflective of what a lot of people are feeling.
I've got friends who want to move abroad. They just want some stability somewhere else.
I've got a friend who has moved to Amsterdam.
Oh, right.
To get away from it. Right. And you know what? I think you've actually nailed it there, Stephen, because I've been around working on newspapers for a long, long time now, 35 years, and I can never remember a time that I've been personally and professionally that worried about the politics in this country and where we're going. And, you know, normally you could think, right, OK, well, if A, B and C happens, there's a way out of it. I can't see
Lettuce cams says it all. Can we talk about chocolate to end? We've been talking about it all morning.
Yeah.
You've been partial. I've fed you many a chocolate bar over the years.
You have, and I've been going hypo, yes.
Right, well, you can't eat chocolate yet, evidently. You've got 3 hours to go. The best time of day to eat chocolate, by the way, is 11 a.m. Well, between 9 and 11, to be specific. And you're meant to treat it rather like... This is a survey by a chocolate company, by the way, Galaxy. And you're meant to store it... You're meant to treat chocolate like fine wine.
How are you?
So you store it...
What, sip it slowly rather than just ram it straight in?
Binging.
I've failed on that one.
You don't put it in the fridge and you treat it... it's about 18 degrees you're meant to store it at, and you're not meant to chew it, you're meant to savour it like a fine wine.
Well, it is nice. Have you ever sucked a cube of chocolate?
Wow.
You just put it in your mouth and just let it melt in your mouth.
Actually, I thought that was very weird, but actually, Maltesers, it's quite fun just to let it... Yeah.
If you do put it in and just let it dissolve in your mouth, it's really, really lovely.
Have you ever played that game of trying to make a Malteser float of your mouth?
There's lots to be fun to be able to
Or biting the ends off a Twix and then using it as a straw to suck your teeth through.
That's bizarre.
No, that's no.
Delicious.
No, that's just you, Isabel.
No,
That's
it's a
not
thing, it's a
that's
thing.
not proper chocolate. They're like biscuits with
Okay.
chocolate on it.
Yeah. I'm quite addicted to chocolate. I know.
Are
I think
you?
it said about eating it every day. Like,
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, I eat it every day.
Do you?
How much though every day?
I went through a really bad habit. You know the Milky Bars, but the big ones. I would just have one of those every day.
Wow.
700
You'd never
calories.
guess. You don't look like a piggy.
Oh, thank you. I think that's a compliment.
Piggy.
Sounds like you are,
Don't
but
like a
you
piggy.
don't look like one.
Oh, there you go. Piggy Red Drop. And Dawn Neeson, thank you very much indeed. I mean, honestly, she's so rude.
I know. Ego just shattered.
Oh, no, you're the one calling him that. Right, Dawn, Oscar, we appreciate you. We'll see you in the 8.
Right. Now...
from chocolate to fruit and veg.
Fruit and veg, much more sensible. And, of course, we know the prices are all going up in the supermarkets. No surprise there. So a lot of people... And actually, it is a lot cheaper, but it's also a lot tastier, are growing their own at home.
You think it's tastier?
Oh, much tastier, yeah, fresh, yeah.
Well, that includes Man City and England forward Jack Grealish, who, despite being a millionaire footballer, has erected a vegetable patch at his new countryside mansion.
Well, according to the king of vegetables, Gerald Stratford, we're all capable of doing the same. Yes, we certainly are, and he joins us now. Morning to you, lovely to see you. Let's just put Isabel right on that, first and foremost, should we? They are much tastier, aren't they? Plucked straight out of the ground.
For anybody who's never eaten a real fresh vegetable, I would recommend trying because it is second to none. There's nothing better.
Tastes best plucked fresh from the ground then. Surely not a potato. You're talking carrots or something sweet.
You can eat a potato uncooked. You slice it incredibly thin.
Yeah.
Add some sugar and a spot of vinegar. And I mean just a spot of vinegar. And add it to your salad. So potatoes can be eaten raw, but most of us eat them cooked.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's nice raw, actually, and in a salad, is a sprout. Quite like a raw sprout.
Yeah, all cabbages and sprouts can be eaten raw. It's lovely.
What do you make of Jack Grealish and all this? Because I mean, whether it's true or not, whether he's growing his own, I don't know. But there'll be a lot of people watching and listening, Gerald, who think, oh, it's a lot of work, isn't it, to do all of this? Should we all be doing it? How hard is it to actually start your own vegetable plot?
Well, regards keeping fit. I'm 73, almost 74. I've never been to a gym in my life, but I've gardened all my life. And I like to think that I'm fit. And Jack, being a footballer, is going to be very fit. And if he carries on gardening, he will do more gardening and less gym work. And he'll still maintain that fitness.
Right, so if people are watching this and they're inspired by Jack Grealish and they're thinking, OK, I've got a window box or I've got a little tiny garden or maybe I could get an allotment, where should a beginner start? What's the easiest thing, foolproof, that they could grow?
The easiest thing is a radish. Yes. You can buy a packet of radishes for not very much money. £1 in some shops, a little bit more. And one 10-litre bucket, and you could grow enough radishes for a couple or 3 meals in your window box. You can look after them. You don't need acres and acres of space to start your gardening career.
How long would it take for those radishes to grow then?
Pardon?
How long would it take for those radishes to be edible?
From putting the seed in the soil, with a little bit of luck, 28 days, which isn't very long.
No, it's perfect, and it's a great way to get the bug as well. Gerald, really good to see you. Happy gardening today. Catch up with you soon, I hope. We need to get you trained into
I
all
need
of
to
this.
grow radishes. I love radishes.
Yeah, you got to do it. You can do it.
I think the kids would enjoy it as well. Really nice thing to do with children, I think, planting.
Oh,
I might try some
right.
tomatoes as well. I'm inspired.
Those
Gerald.
little crust heads in eggshells. and
Oh,
all
we've
that.
done that, yeah, but that's
The
less
start.
appetising. Yeah, I suppose. Look, after the break, we're outside Downing Street. Big morning. The Chancellor's preparing to bring forward measures for the medium-term fiscal plan that was announced first thing this morning. We'll have full analysis after your weather. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking windy across northern areas with showers. Elsewhere, prolonged sunny spells with rain soon clearing. Let's take a look at the details. So across the south and west, it will be dry with plenty of sunshine during the morning, although some high-level cloud will lead to slightly hazier skies at times. Any early rain will soon clear the south and east with plenty of sunshine developing. Southwesterly winds mostly light, top temperatures reaching 17 Celsius. Dry and windy across Wales with sunny spells, some cloudy, but maybe thick enough to give the odd light shower over high ground. Fine and dry with prolonged sunny spells for all during the morning, although skies may turn hazier at times, and winds will pick up during the morning with gustier conditions developing into the afternoon. Dry with prolonged sunny spells, particularly across the east of the area. It'll become windy across the region from late morning with gusts perhaps reaching 50 miles per hour, especially across high ground later. Windy with showers or longer spells of rain continuing to affect much of Scotland. The weather will improve a little across southern Scotland into the afternoon with some brighter spells developing. And across Northern Ireland, it will be very windy with coastal gales. Showers continue to affect western counties during the morning, but these should ease and become less frequent later. So a decent autumn day across much of England and Wales, but some gusty conditions with showers continuing elsewhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
A new Chancellor takes control and announces a new fiscal plan to reassure the markets.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. It's Monday the 17th of October. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel and Stephen.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The new Chancellor will bring forward measures from the medium-term fiscal plan 2 weeks ahead of schedule. It's being announced to reassure the markets as the pound makes gains, up around 0.7% this morning.
Hundreds of Met police officers should be sacked for sexual misconduct, misogyny, racism and homophobia. That's according to the new police commissioner, after a damning report revealed officers have been breaking the law and apparently getting away with it.
From damaging priceless art to pouring pints of milk in the supermarket aisles, Home Secretary Suella Braverman unveils plans to crack down on climate protests, accusing demonstrators of holding the public to ransom.
And more controversy for the Crown as the former Prime Minister Sir John Major speaks out over the latest series. We'll ask if it's right to include Diana's final moments for the purposes of entertainment.
And as always, we love to hear from you throughout the programme. We are the People's Channel. Send in your emails, send in your tweets, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So we start with the developing news. We heard about just after 6 o'clock this morning that the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, is going to make a statement at 11 o'clock, bringing forward measures from the medium-term fiscal plan to support fiscal sustainability. Easy for me to say.
Well, the announcement comes a fortnight earlier than expected and will fast-track billions of pounds worth of tax and spending measures.
Well, it comes as the Prime Minister is facing even more pressure this morning. 3 of her own MPs have now openly called on her to go.
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who joins us from Downing Street this morning. I suppose the plan will be to try and ease some of that pressure by bringing forward this announcement at 11 o'clock. The question is, Tom, whether or not it will work.
Yes, that is certainly a big question, and I suppose we could start renaming this medium-term fiscal plan an almost immediate-term fiscal plan, given the changes that we're expecting to hear about first this morning from the Chancellor and then much more fleshed out to the House of Commons at a statement at the dispatch box of the Commons at around 3:30, we expect as well. So 2 statements from the Chancellor today, and of course it's only been about 3 minutes since bond markets opened for this week in the United Kingdom. No doubt we'll bring more analysis in terms of how they are reacting to this statement, but fundamentally that's what it's all about. That's why we had this sort of 6 a.m. announcement from the Treasury that this was going to take place today. Very few people expected this to take place today. There of course are a number of reasons why it may well make sense to try and steady the markets now. Waiting 2 weeks for all of these announcements, if they have already been decided, may well be holding the country in a state of limbo, and that's something the Treasury doesn't necessarily want to do. But also it does show that really we do have a new sense of leadership in this country, an economic strategy from the Prime Minister that's been nothing short of junked by the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt. And I suppose the question that many will be asking is who is actually in charge, who is picking the direction of this country, because it does seem that many of the manifesto pledges, or I should say leadership manifesto pledges of Liz Truss have now been junked. Indeed, the big differential points between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, the points on which she won her leadership election, have now been thrown away. And more than that, looking back at the 2019 Conservative manifesto, that was a manifesto that promised to keep taxes low, that championed the 19% rate of corporation tax, saying that had made the United Kingdom more competitive, said that it wanted to bring down rates of national insurance as well, and raise thresholds and all the rest of it. Well, now this is a government that seems to be committing to raising some taxes, indeed raising that tax burden higher than it was under the previous government, and that is a pretty seismic about turn. It's hard to see how the Prime Minister currently has any authority at all, and that is perhaps why we're hearing some of these moves from Conservative MPs, not only today but of course across the weekend. Yesterday, 3 Conservative MPs coming out declaring they have no confidence in the Prime Minister, and I understand that the officers, the most senior officers of the 1922 committee, will be meeting today, perhaps to discuss what happens next. It seems that Sir Graham Brady, who's been away in Greece the last week, he's back today. It seems that he is minded to not pull the trigger quite yet, saying that, or his thinking goes along the lines that this government should at least have a chance to put out the full medium-term fiscal plan 2 weeks today. However, it does seem that if there was that mechanism for Conservative MPs to make their letters of no confidence count at this stage, surely that threshold would be met.
OK, Tom, thank you. Let's talk to Harry Phibbs from Conservative Home, who's here in the studio. It was a bit of a shock, Harry, when Conservative Home came out against Liz Truss, or your editor did, over the weekend. Does any of this change the position, do you think?
Oh, well, I think as Tom Harwood was saying, the idea of pulling, once a decision's been made, the idea of avoiding delay, avoiding uncertainty, I think is sensible. So I'm not sure that it'll make a fundamental change. But the difficulty the plotters have got, and it's almost flattering them to call them plotters, is because they don't really know what alternative they're wanting to have. They don't know who they're wanting to have as leader. They don't know what mechanism they're wanting to have to choose the leader. They don't know what any new leader should do. And of the three that we've had so far, they probably don't even agree among themselves who should be the leader. So I'm actually a bit more sceptical than most people, including my boss, Paul Goodman on Conservative Home, about the idea that Liz Truss will be going anytime soon. I think that although there's a huge amount of sort of panic and despondency among Conservative MPs, I don't think they're in a mood to take this sort of leap into the unknown.
But it seems like a rudderless ship, doesn't it?
Well, let's see how things work out. I actually thought Jeremy Hunt, new Chancellor, did pretty well in his interviews. He didn't sound as though he was, a man who was in a great sense of panic. I mean, one of the things is that he still made clear that he believes, obviously Liz Truss does, in a smaller state, lower tax, low regulation, wealth creation, and it's about getting through this storm, as he put it. And so I think there'll be some Liz Truss supporters who won't have given up on those, as Tom Harwood said.
Fair.
The basis.
Rishi
Sorry?
Sunak said that, so I mean, it's hardly, a unifying comment.
Well, and in the 2019 manifesto, as Tom Harwood was saying, I mean, these are the basic Conservative policies. So I think there's agreement for those. It's a question of how much prospect Conservatives feel of being able to get back on course before the next election.
I mean, so Stephen asked, it feels a bit rudderless. Do you then think it's not rudderless, but it's just that the Chancellor has his hands on the rudder?
Well, I think that it's the difficulty we have is not that that tax is too low, but its spending is too high. And so the way to really get through this is to get spending down. And that, I think, is what's challenging in terms of all the suggestions from all the Tory MPs that any cuts would be very painful. I don't actually think that's necessarily true. I think there is a lot of scope in terms of, for example, huge amounts spent on quangos. I mean, astonishing amounts. And we've had this huge increase in spending. So I think that's probably what they'll need to do sooner or later is to get a grip on spending. And I think that's I hope, something that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor will have been discussing at Chequers yesterday.
Well, I mean, that'd be all right, wouldn't it? Get rid of a lot of quangos, because we wouldn't notice the difference then, would we?
No, well, and of course it would tie in with getting rid of the regulations, because the other thing is we've got a huge burden of regulation, and a lot of the time it's the officials going round telling farmers what to do, or small businesses what to do, attacking the self-employed. So I think that would be, if we're getting rid of a lot of regulation, one of the benefits would be we wouldn't need as many quangocrats. So I think that's the kind of agenda that the government, probably the Prime Minister and Chancellor, would agree on, and most Conservative MPs would agree on, and they need to get a bit assertive and get a bit on the front foot, really, and then I think there's a way through.
OK, we shall see. Harry, good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Quangocrats, I like that. I hadn't heard that.
We haven't talked about
quangos for a while.
Quangos. 1990s, there was a lot of chat about quangos.
Quasi-autonomous, non-governmental organisations, I believe. Look, let's bring in Andrew Pearce now, because later today, the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, will unveil new fast-track measures, as we've been discussing, to pay for Liz Truss's mini-budget in an effort to calm those markets. Good morning to you.
Can I give you another definition of quango? Description of quango.
Yeah.
Waste of flipping public money. And a lot of them.
So no one's going to be grieving the loss of the quangos.
We don't need any of them. Get rid of the lot.
So do you think that will be enough to solve all the problems?
If I had £1 for every time I've written there's going to be a bonfire if the Crown goes, I'd be a multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
Every Prime Minister pledges it, they never do it. Just like every Secretary of State for Health says they're going to cut down on administrators, they're going to bring back matron. They never do. We saw in the Sunday papers yesterday records amounts being spent on spin doctors and diversity officers when there's record waiting lists. It's mad. Get a grip of it.
Well, I tell you what, we're in this weird position now where, I mean, Jeremy Hunt says Liz Truss is behind his plans, despite the fact it's the exact opposite of Trussonomics, so nobody believes it. And so you've got someone who effectively seems to be running the country pretty much at the moment, who is not Prime Minister and who most of his colleagues did not want to be Prime Minister.
Make absolutely no mistake, the de facto Prime Minister is now Jeremy Hunt, who ran twice for the Tory leadership, failed both times. The second time, when he was up against Truss, he got a mere 18 votes. He's a Remainer. He was Secretary of State for Health for 6 years. Did he transform the NHS in that time? No. Waiting lists got worse. All the problems continued with social care, but she picked him because he's on the other wing of the party and he's a steady pair of hands. He's very experienced. He was in the cabinet for the best part of 10 years and he's got quite a nice manner, hasn't he?
Oh, I mean, the media round he did already
very
was just different league from Liz Truss compared to that press appearance on Friday from Liz Truss. The worst thing I've ever seen.
I've never seen a press conference that bad for a Prime Minister. She looked like a rabbit caught in the headlights, terrified. She couldn't even seem to get a grip of who was going to ask the questions. The name should have been on the list. She answered the same question with the same answer every time, and she sounded even more robotic than normal. But the one thing I thought was really striking, Isabel, she looked scared.
Yeah. Almost thought she was going to cry.
Yeah, and I thought, this is overwhelming her.
Does she have to go? I mean, does she actually have to go?
If she can't steady the markets, if she can't deliver, I mean, her whole policy...
But with all this, she's not steadying it. It won't be her, will it? It'll be Jeremy Hunt.
It's difficult to see how she limps on, but how do you get rid of a Prime Minister? You'd have to go back 200 years to find a parliament where we had 3 Prime Ministers in the same parliament. 200 years. There'll be a clamour for a general election if they topple her. And look at the polls. The Tories would be massacred. And the rules say you can only have a leadership challenge once a year. You can change those rules. The danger to her is what happened to Boris, that ministers start to quit. But that's going to destabilise the country again. It's going to destabilise the markets. So I think she's there till the end of the month when we get the detailed financial statement, and then we'll see.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because this announcement that Jeremy Hunt's making at 11 and then speaking to Parliament is likely to steady things and calm things, isn't it? But whether or not you can then continue, as you say, in the medium term, so whether up until Christmas, with a Prime Minister that doesn't represent or stand for or believe in any of the measures that have calmed everything down, which is totally divorced from everything that he's bringing in.
Mind you, Jeremy Hunt doesn't believe in all of it either, because she announced in the press conference that the cancelling the rise in corporation tax from 19 to 25% is now not going to happen. It will happen. Hunt, in his leadership campaign, said he wanted to cut corporation tax from 19 to 15%. But look, he's a pragmatist. He's been brought back in from the cold. He was in the wilderness. He thought it was all over. And who'd have thought that Jeremy Hunt, who twice tried to be Prime Minister, in fact, is really in all but name.
But it's interesting, isn't it? We're sort of split on all this one, because we talk about, well, these measures calming the markets. The markets are going to be happy. It's all good. It's all rosy. But what it's going to do is upset the electorate, because we're talking about making growth actually more difficult. We're talking about removing an income tax cut for those people who would really benefit from that. And, you know, this is hugely problematic, actually.
It is, and I don't recall a worse start to a government ever in my lifetime, and it's a complete pig's ear. And we reported in the Mail on Saturday that it was Truss who overrode her Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, because he said, let's not do this cut in the top rate of tax because of how it will look. The opposite was always terrible. And she insisted on it, and yet he was thrown under a bus.
Well, I mean,
and then reversed over was the phrase this morning.
But
it's interesting. Can we talk about the journalistic side of this? Because the day after that budget, the Mail's headline was, at last, you know, a proper Tory budget. Well, of course, now the tables have turned on all of that. Why do you think papers like the Mail, which you were associate editor, went on that line? Why do they think it was good?
Well, because we haven't had a budget from a Tory Chancellor which said, I'm going to cut taxes, cut regulation, and aim for growth. It was all about cutting taxes rather than redistributing redistributing wealth, which we're not generating much of. There were serious reservations, let me tell you, in the Mail about the cut in the top rate of tax, and nobody was sorry to see that go. But I'm sorry, for instance, that she's getting rid of the cut. She's putting up corporation tax. People on the left will say, oh, it only helps fat cat rich employers. If you've got a small business, you pay corporation tax. If you're a self-employed plumber, you're almost certainly paying corporation tax if your profits reach a certain level. So it's going to hit lots of small traders, and they're the bread and butter of the economy. And they're also often vote Tory.
Because what it does then is it removes the opportunity which she said we were being presented with for rapid growth. Well, we still get growth, possibly, out of all of this, but it will be much more steady. I mean, perhaps more sensible in a way, but we're in a very difficult situation right now.
A lot of this could have been avoided if they hadn't gone out of their way to avoid the Office of Budget Responsibility proclaiming on what they thought. They tried to avoid scrutiny, and in the end you can't, and the markets took fright, and that was the big problem. And also the Chancellor going on the radio and TV that weekend after saying, oh, I'm going to cut taxes even more. And my God, the markets are already rocky. And then they went into freefall.
And look, in stark contrast from this statement that the Chancellor put out this morning, talking about having met with the Governor of the Bank of England last night and the head of the Debt Management Office, and reassuring everyone that they would be doing their full fiscal plan on the 31st alongside the OBR, so really hand in hand with all the big financial institutions, which is what the market really reacts to.
Well, the market wants that, but I mean, the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, is hardly painting himself in a good picture anyway, is he?
How does the word idiot sound? I'm not an economist, but I thought it was staggering that last week in the IMF he said the support in the gilts market, none of us really understand what gilts are, do we? But we know it's to try and stop the pound, pressure on the pound. He was stopping it on Friday. So tell the cities, tell all the city slickers they can go and bet against the pound even more. Astonishing. And then a briefing privately to the FT. Actually, if more support's needed, it will come. A Governor of the Bank of England should not be proclaiming his hand, showing his hand to the markets, which at the end of the day, very difficult to beat them. And there's lots of people making money out of this. And we mustn't forget the big issue, really. It's not just the screw up over the mini budget, it's the strength of the dollar. Dominant all around the world. The only currency I think that's risen against the dollar is the Russian ruble, ironically, because of all the money countries are pouring into Putin's coffers for his horrible gas.
Oh, Andrew Pearce, I'd love to say it's lovely talking to you, but it's quite depressing this morning.
It's very depressing.
Can't remember a time like it, but anyway, always lovely to see your face.
Great to see
Andrew
you.
Pearce, thank you.
Don't give him any compliments, for heaven's sake.
Nobody's going to say that about your face.
No.
Now, it's lovely to see you both.
It's true, though. He's got a fair point. It's 18 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines. And Ukraine's capital has been rocked by blasts this morning for a second time in a week. The mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, says several buildings in a central district of the capital have been damaged by kamikaze drones. Fire's broken out, as you can see. Authorities are at the site. No word yet on casualties.
Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley says hundreds of police officers behaved disgracefully and should be kicked out of the force. His comments come after a new report found officers are getting away with breaking the law and committing misconduct. The Met's misconduct procedures have also been described as racist and misogynistic.
The King will meet families from war-torn countries who've moved to Aberdeen today. It's part of a government scheme to resettle refugees in the city. He'll hear how Aberdeen City Council has supported people from Ukraine, Syria and Afghanistan, as well as hearing the personal stories from the families. Now, hundreds of Met police officers should be sacked, apparently, for committing misconduct. That's according to, of all people, the new police commissioner.
Yes, Sir Mark Rowley says he wants to get rid of hundreds of staff and claims they're guilty of crimes and unethical conduct.
Well, let's talk to former Detective Superintendent Shabnam Chowdhury. Really good to see you this morning. Are you surprised by what Sir Mark had to say?
Do you know what? I want to say that I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, but I'm honestly absolutely sickened. I had an opportunity to read that report. I've not slept all night because I found it so upsetting and disturbing, and I feel so sick for those officers within the organisations, the black and the minority officers that are being subjected to this, the female officers, and including those that have tried to call it out and they've been obstructed by leaders and managers across the organisation who have refused to accept their allegations and then subject them to closing of ranks and then isolate those officers. I think it's absolutely sickening.
Right, so give us some examples of what's been really disturbing you in particular cases. Can you tell us some details?
Well, look, let's not forget why this actual review was brought about, because of the murder of a young woman, Sarah Everard, at the hands of a police officer, okay, who's also still about to go into court for some other allegations against him. There's one officer, for example, who's had 11 cases. These aren't just inappropriate behaviours. These are criminal allegations, assault, fraud, misogyny, sexism, behaviours that are totally unacceptable in any profession. And the outcome was, in many cases, no case to answer. And then finally, reflective practice. Reflective practice means that you go away, you reflect on your behaviour, you decide whether or not that behaviour is acceptable or not, and you either change those behaviours. He clearly did not change those behaviours, and he's still walking around in the organisation. And the other thing I would add to that is shame on the leaders that allowed that to happen, to allow it to be investigated time and time again for every single incident, and failed to appropriately investigate it. How does that make the public feel? How does that make victims feel who want to come forward and report their own allegations of domestic abuse or any other crime, for example?
You can say the people who are, allegedly responsible for these acts are to blame, and there's their own case to answer there. But in terms of the organisation, who's at fault here? Is it senior management? Is it middle management who've been the ones, as you're saying, closing ranks? Where does that structure have to change?
It starts from the top and it goes right down to your frontline managers, so your sergeants, for example, who are managing your constables. Remember, 124% of black and minority officers are subjected to what you call Regulation 13. These are probationers within the organisation that are trying to get through their first 2 years of service, who are then subjected to Regulation 13 and are 124% more likely, black and Asian officers, to leave because of the way that they are being treated in terms of the supervision and the fact that they're being told you're not good enough for the job. So it starts from the bottom at the frontline management and it leads to the leadership at the very top of the organisation. This isn't just a barrel of rotten apple. This is a disease that has spread across the Metropolitan Police, unfortunately. I don't deny that there are some fantastic officers. There are many good and hard-working officers who don't want this kind of behaviour, who have tried to call it out, who have tried to support those officers, but there are too many in the leadership roles that don't allow those complaints to go any further.
Departure of Dame Cressida Dick is a step in the right direction in all of this, and the comments and horror from Mark Rowley, saying he was appalled by the findings and apologising not only to the public but to fellow officers as well for all of this. Do you think that he will be able to turn things around?
I reserve my judgment, but I'm more hopeful now than I have been in the past. Words speak louder than, actions, and he has already taken action. He's increased his professional standards capacity so that officers can be rooted out more quickly. He's created a new department which is for the domestic abuse complaints against police officers by other officers and by members of the public. So that's a really good start. He's obviously had an opportunity to look at some of the review that he and Baroness Casey have spoken about, and he's implemented some of those processes already. This isn't just about bad and rotten apples. This is about systems and processes that have been broken for decades. I felt last night when I read this report, when I heard about some of the things that were coming, like I'd been catapulted back into 1999 when the Macpherson report was first published and the Met was labelled institutionally racist. And they did make some good changes in the early stages, but somewhere along the line, something has gone horribly wrong, and this culture has well and truly embedded itself. So Mark Rowley has got a very big, high mountain to climb, and he needs the root and branch of officers to make sure that they're behind him to root out those disgusting, rotten, dirty cops.
OK, Shabnam Chowdhury, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Now, after the break, we have the latest on the Lucy Letby trial as it enters its second week. But first of all, here's your Monday forecast. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking windy across northern areas with showers. Elsewhere, prolonged sunny spells with rain soon clearing. Let's take a look at the details. So across the south and west, it will be dry with plenty of sunshine during the morning, although some high-level cloud will lead to slightly hazier skies at times. Any early rain will soon clear the south and east with plenty of sunshine developing. Southwesterly winds mostly light, top temperatures reaching 17 Celsius. Dry and windy across Wales with sunny spells, some cloudy, but maybe thick enough to give the odd light shower over high ground. Fine and dry with prolonged sunny spells for all during the morning, although skies may turn hazier at times, and winds will pick up during the morning with gustier conditions developing into the afternoon. Dry with prolonged sunny spells, particularly across the east of the area. It'll become windy across the region from late morning with gusts perhaps reaching 50 miles per hour, especially across high ground later. Windy with showers or longer spells of rain continuing to affect much of Scotland. The weather will improve a little across southern Scotland into the afternoon with some brighter spells developing. And across Northern Ireland, it will be very windy with coastal gales. Showers continue to affect western counties during the morning, but these should ease and become less frequent later. So a decent autumn day across much of England and Wales, but some gusty conditions with showers continuing elsewhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. 8:29 still to come on the programme this morning. Have fruit and veg become luxury items? We're talking to the consumer queen, Kate Hardcastle. She tells us how to stay healthy in a cost of living crisis.
And he's criticised the Chancellor's fast-tracking plan, calling it evidence of the panicking government. Is he right? 9 o'clock, we'll speak to Labour's Pat McFadden.
And as ever, we love to hear from you. Loads of emails this morning. Keep them coming, and we'll try and reflect just as many as we can.
Now, the trial of the former nurse Lucy Letby is entering its second week as legal experts expect the case to go on for at least 6 months.
Well, Letby stands accused of attacking newborn babies, including by insulin poisoning and injecting infants with air, causing them to stop breathing. This is all during an alleged killing spree between 2015 and 2016.
Let's talk to our reporter, Sophie Reaper, who's at Manchester Crown Court, and talk us through the latest developments as the trial finished its first week, Sophie.
Well, good morning to you both. As you said, the Lucy Letby trial will continue here at Manchester Crown Court this morning. The former nurse has been charged with the murder of 7 babies, as well as the attempted murders of a further 10 babies, while she was working on the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital. She denies all of the charges against her. Now, as you said, the trial began last week, and we heard from both the prosecution and the defence. The prosecution went first, and initially they gave the jury the details around all of the children in this case, from child A all the way through to child Q. The jury were also presented with just the beginning of the evidence in this trial, including a post-it note that police found in Lucy Letby's home. On the note, it said things like, "I killed them on purpose because I am not good enough, and I am a horrible, evil person." Now, once the prosecution concluded with their opening, the defence then began with theirs. They asked the jury not to let emotion overtake reason in this case, and for them to hear all of the evidence before they made their judgment. Today, we're expecting 2 intelligence analysts from the Cheshire Police to come forward to give us an outline of the sequence of events between June of 2015 and June of 2016, which is when Lucy Letby allegedly carried out her attacks.
OK, Sophie, for now, thank you. Of course, we'll keep you fully up to date with what is going on as that trial continues.
Harrowing stuff. Look, after the break, get Dawn and Oscar back to chat through the papers one last time this Monday morning. Don't go anywhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It is 8:34. Good morning to you. Let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines. And the Treasury says the Chancellor, that's Jeremy Hunt in case you'd forgotten, will make a statement today after talks with the Prime Minister this weekend. He's set to fast forward some measures from the medium-term fiscal plan, which will still be released in full at the end of the month. The Chancellor apparently met the Bank of England Governor and the head of the Debt Management Office last night to brief them on the plans.
Ukraine's capital has been rocked by blasts this morning for the second time in a week. The mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, says several residential buildings in a central district in Kyiv have been damaged by kamikaze drones. He said a fire's broken out, but authorities are dealing with it at the site, although there's no word yet on whether there are any casualties.
And the Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, says hundreds of police officers behaved disgracefully and should be kicked out. His comments come after a new report found officers are getting away with breaking the law and committing misconduct. The misconduct procedures have also been described as racist and misogynistic.
It's time to go through the papers one last time now with the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and former special advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Redrup. Very warm welcome back to both of you. Dawn, you want to talk about these environmental protests.
Oh.
Anti-oil protesters targeting the car showroom on Park Lane yesterday. In fact, we spoke to Just Stop Oil this morning about it. What are the Times saying?
They are saying pretty much a brilliant interview, by the way. I thought it absolutely nailed it this morning.
He was excellent, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was interesting. But I mean, the thing is, look, as you've discussed, I mean, they went to Park Lane and they sprayed orange. What is this obsession with orange? Orange paint all over the Aston Martin car showroom, and it's just like they're just rich, spoilt kids with too much time on their hands, aren't they? They're not living in the real world. And it's just, look, I don't eat meat. I haven't eaten meat for years like you, Stephen. I don't even drive. I cycle everywhere. I don't have children. I'm not doing that for them. And it's like, even me, and I'm quite green, they're just making me so angry about they're not helping the cause, are they? I do everything I possibly can to help the cause.
But they are being seen and heard as a result.
And we're having this conversation.
But they're being seen and heard and making you want to punch them. Yeah. I'm sorry, I know, violence is not the answer, but you watch people dragging them out of the roads now, and you can't blame them for doing it. And at some point, somebody is going to get seriously hurt. And as for what he said to you about not getting in the way of ambulances and emergency services, that was a blatant lie. There have literally been ambulances on film having to turn around to get past the blockades.
But is there a serious point in all of this, Oscar, that people feel that they can't get their voice heard any other way, that the democratic system is too busy navel-gazing? We've got endless what are they calling it, a Tory death cult at the moment, discussions. I mean, the whole of 2022 has been, arguments over who should be leader or who shouldn't be leader.
Well, it's not even then, is it?
I mean,
it's going back decades and decades. It's very difficult to get heard.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same, you can't take an issue that you have with society and then go, to hell with this. I'm going to, basically, let's call it what it is, start vandalising property and, getting in the way of people's lives. I think it's really interesting because you just know, and I watched all the clips of these protests recently, you just know that they desperately want, hundreds of members of the public kind of cheering them and, as they get handcuffed by the police, they will, yeah, you're amazing, what. And actually, when you watch the public's reaction to them, it's so interesting because it's almost, if they're not being dragged out the street, if you watch the milk ones in the shop the other day, it's just like, can you off, they get none of that. It's absolutely just complete insanity in terms of trying to get a positive message across for a cause you really care about.
What do you make of Malcolm in Carlisle? Because it's difficult to know. I've made some assumptions, and they are assumptions about the backgrounds of some of these people, right? Let me just say that. Malcolm in Carlisle says, what really angers me is the sense of entitlement these people assume.
And one thing that does annoy me as well, I think that's a very good point there, Malcolm, is the fact that, they are pouring milk over the floor. They were throwing soup, and it was good quality soup, by the way. It wasn't cheap and nasty, at the sunflowers painting. And it's like, there are people in this country struggling to buy food and feed their children, and you are throwing it. And as Oscar just said, this is pure vandalism. You can't condone that. These are criminal offences.
It's quite sad in a way. The one slight thing I would say in defence, actually, is that a lot of if you look at the Stop Oil, and if you they're young. A lot of these people doing this are young, and I would imagine there are people much older who should know a lot better, who are slightly, I don't want to use but slightly leading them astray and slightly brainwashing them and using these young people to do things that they don't really understand the meaning of and the repercussions. And what I would say is, because these young people have obviously got something about them, like they feel like bold and brave enough to go and do this crazy stuff, like get involved in politics. If you actually want to make a change, become a local councillor.
I tell you what,
actually affect change. Don't just stand there throwing paint and
yelling. I'll tell you what annoys me in all of this. I'm not saying that we should all have this sort of take everything into our own hands, but if that was happening in my supermarket and I pushed them away from the milk, I'd be done for actual bodily harm.
Well, that's what Margaret's emailed in, and she says it's seriously time to consider moving abroad when you see protesters that are not suffering any consequences to their vandalism, their violent crime rising and expenses.
You do feel slightly oddly proud to be British when you see it tends to be people who actually have jobs and are trying to get to their place of work when they kind of, and it is quite, it's not too robust, but when they do kind of drag the lockers, you do feel I kind of oddly proud. Yeah, a little. It's literally exactly that as well.
Let's talk zero COVID in the Telegraph, should we, Oscar? China said this zero COVID policy, which has been controversial. It says it's got no regrets.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to link it to British politics too much, but I still don't think as a society we have fully almost sat down and really began to take in what COVID has done to us as a society. Almost, because it does still feel surreal. I don't think we fully processed it. And we know that the lockdowns that we had in this country, the mental health, the absolute economic aftershocks that we're seeing now is as a result of lockdowns. And it's just absolutely terrifying to think that in a part of the world right now, there are still communities, human beings, who are still have been locked down since 2020. Over 2 years of... I just find that utterly terrifying. I know it's a really contentious issue, lockdown. Should we have done more? Should we have done less? But I think China coming out today saying they have zero regrets over that, I think is... comparatively, we should be really grateful for how COVID was handled.
It was incredibly draconian. At one point, they were actually literally barricading people into the homes.
It's honestly terrifying.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrifying.
Well, this is all in the context, wasn't it, Xi Jinping making his statement at the Communist Party, sort of effectively their political conference, and basically paving the way to say, I've done my 10 years, which is the normal amount of time, but I'm basically going to keep this post until I die.
Very different to us.
A very different situation. Yeah.
Can't do 10 minutes.
And, just reading in so much about what his plans are and reserving the right to use violence to reclaim Taiwan if they want to. It was quite a scary speech that he made yesterday, I think.
And I think the whole overarching theme here is that COVID, to many people, has been the absolute perfect instrument for that, for his leadership in terms of infiltrating such sinister kind of leadership qualities like that.
He was meant to be a reformer, comparatively speaking.
Comparatively, which brings us nicely back to Jeremy Hunt, who was actually quite a fan of how China did deal with COVID originally.
It is easy, though, isn't it, with a crystal, looking back with 2020 hindsight vision, how it was all going to play out. A lot of, nobody knew the best policy, but anyway.
Well. Dawn, is this the actual headline in The Sun, Winter of Discontent? Or is that because that's just... No, it is.
That's the shorthand, isn't it? It's the shorthand
honestly, if I hear Winter of Discontent one more time...
The actual headline in The Sun is 2 million plot strikes. Disputes could bring Britain to a grinding halt, or not exactly charging along.
They are saying a new winter of discontent, though, in the piece. I mean, Lord.
This is the trade union Congress. Their annual meeting is taking place on Wednesday in Brighton, and they are warning that, 1.9 million public service workers are either set to strike or be balloted for industrial action over the next few months, and the union leaders are warning that they are more than happy, by the sounds of it, to bring the country grinding to a standstill.
These people who are complaining that the economy is damaged, it's not performing, it's not getting people what they need, there's not enough money, everything's too expensive, and they want to bring it all to an absolute and utter standstill.
This is the irony of the situation, isn't it? Because, by doing what they're doing, they will potentially lose their members, their jobs.
Well, it is an... Look, I understand people are so frustrated and have got a lot of problems and financial issues and all the rest, which are very serious. I'm not underestimating it.
Of course
But it's an act of self-harm.
It is, yeah.
Which
yeah,
is...
I mean, we've talked a lot this morning, in particular about the paper reviews, about unity and the need to move on together and stop fighting like children in a school playground. And this is just not helping. Like you, Stephen, I completely appreciate and I support the right to go on strike. Of course I do. But, what do they want? Everybody in the country, whether private or public sector, to get a inflation-matching pay rise? Yeah. It's just not possible for a start.
Yeah. And the message it gives out, UK PLC, I flew in, I popped away for my birthday a couple of weekends ago, and we arrived in Gatwick. There were no ground staff, they were all striking, so we were stuck in the plane for an extra couple of hours. Then we got into the airport terminal, the trains were on strikes, there were no you saw all the tourists arriving completely running around like headless chickens, trying to sort out Ubers or what it was from Gatwick to get into London. It's not a good message.
It's not, and I do think exactly these issues that we're talking about now will dictate the narrative for the next general election, whenever that may be, whether that's in 2 years' time or in 2 months' time. And I really feel like that politicians, government, actually the striking issues is a real problem in terms of how the Labour Party...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're actually really stuck on that issue. But just generally speaking...
Because they can't turn around and offer inflation-busting pay rises
well, exactly,
for everybody.
Exactly. And they also have to saddle up alongside, trade unions and the like. So politically, all the issues we just talked about there are going to be so front and centre of that next general election. Fairness. But what does fairness mean? That means very different. Fairness to some people is like, everyone, can we all just muck along, stop striking, we all need to muck in this together. And for other people, fairness is absolutely having that right and absolutely calling for stuff like that. So that's what I think the next general election will centre on.
It's worrying, isn't it? Because you analyse what's going on in the Labour Party. If you look beneath the smooth surface of Keir Starmer...
They got problems too.
Yeah.
Just as many divisions.
But let's talk about the Tory problem, shall we? As if we haven't talked about them enough, Oscar. On the front of the Times this morning, whilst the Chancellor and the Prime Minister have been at checkers coming up with today's plan, there's been a rebellion brewing, whether it's, also so many factions.
So we obviously, you guys have been talking about it all morning. Some really interesting interviews, actually, with Andrew Pearce. I thought his thoughts were, I think, pretty bang on the money. What I would say is that, and I think just speaking as someone, completely detaching myself from politics for a second and just, a member of the public here, whatever the government and the Tory party want to do, make a decision quickly. If you want to stick with the Prime Minister and believe that, with, Jeremy Hunt's interventions and the absolutely, screeching U-turn, that does create some space, then do it in back here. Or, if you're deciding that she can no longer continue, coalesce around a unity candidate quickly.
Such as?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, that is absolutely a million-dollar question. I think whoever comes next, they have to be as close to a home banker as is possible. It can't be another unknown quantity.
Why won't Ben Wallace step forward? What's stopping him?
I think Ben Wallace is someone who, and this is sometimes levelled as criticism in terms of ambition and moving up the ladder. Ben Wallace is, from what I've always saw, was completely and utterly obsessed with his job in defence. He genuinely loves and values that job.
Which
he cherishes that job so much, and he's brilliant at it.
And now they're saying they're going to sort of make cuts to the defence budget, and he said, look, if you do that, I want nothing to do with this.
Why did you say Ben Wallace?
Well, just he seems like a unity candidate.
He was all over the papers yesterday, wasn't he? It's time for Big Ben and all sorts of things. All the headlines.
Who do you think? Would you say?
Well, you let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Who would
like to keep Truss in, I think.
I don't know.
They certainly were big Truss fans for a while. Let us know. We couldn't call it now. I think people are getting fed up with them all. Yeah. But lots of people were talking about Boris. We had loads of views coming in about bring back Boris. You must be joking, Lawrence says. He's caused this whole scenario. Margaret says, I absolutely pray for him to be brought back. Jan in Sidcup says he missed the best chances ever.
With Brexit.
I think the thing with Boris is he likes to back the winning horse, and he can see that this ship is sinking. So he doesn't want to go near it now, does he?
Well, I think Boris Johnson, if you just very, very quickly, I think Boris Johnson, when we look back, actually was dealt and had to deal with some completely unprecedented and horrific challenges, a global pandemic we've not seen the like for 100 years, a war in our continent, and I actually think, of course, mistakes were made, but I think our Prime Minister at that period of time actually took us through them to pretty well.
Whatever you thought of him at the time, he looks pretty good now.
Yeah.
Gotta be said.
We're at Stephen, the lettuce looks pretty good at the moment.
Yeah, we're out of time. So just Dawn, in 10 seconds, talk us about this spider giving high fives.
This is a lady. She's got a thumbnail spider. Her name is Bianca, and she has trained it to give her high fives and jumps. No, she hasn't. That's what spiders do.
Yes, it is. Oh, we've not got the picture of it.
Oh, what do you mean
go.
that's what spiders do? Spiders give high fives?
Well, they move their legs and things.
Yeah. No, I had a pet spider, Isabel. She's got a little thumbnail spider. Mine was a tarantula, Chilean-nosed tarantula, and it used to give me a high five when I was about to feed it, and that was the only time it ever did that.
Yeah, well, you're all mad. Dawn,
Thank you, something like that.
Thank you
But we
very
love
much.
you. Thank you both. Thank you.
Let's have a quick look at the headlines, should we? At 8:15, Ukraine's capital has been rocked by explosions this morning. The mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, says several residential buildings in a central part of Kyiv have been damaged. He said a fire's broken out. Authorities are on site, but there's no word on any casualties.
Scotland's First Minister will outline her economic plans for an independent Scotland later today. Nicola Sturgeon claims the UK's economic model's failing and holding Scotland back, with the post-Brexit economy lagging behind international comparisons.
More than 400,000 health workers in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will be balloted over strike action. Members of several health unions, including nursing and ambulance staff, are threatening to walk out, which of course would very badly affect services. Let's just talk veg for a sec. Earlier we spoke to star gardener Gerald Stratford, encouraging us to grow our own fruit and veg, and you've been getting in touch. And this is Mary, who says, just picked the last of our tomatoes and runner beans this year. Potatoes, absolutely wonderful. My husband is 83, has never been in a gym, and manages a 2-acre garden. He's totally amazing. Those green tomatoes really there look absolutely lovely.
Yeah, and my brother's been in touch this morning with his own haul from his garden for this week. Pretty impressive, I have to say, from them. They're up in the Highlands of Scotland, which you wouldn't necessarily think could produce all that, but they've got a polytunnel, so I think that's the key to their success.
Oh, well, that's plastic in it. He'll have tomato sauce thrown all over it before you can say Christmas. Maybe those pictures will inspire you, because a recent survey for the Sunday Times has found shoppers are cutting back on fruit and veg, replacing fresh food with pasta, OK, fair enough, and wine.
Sounds good to me. Well, a YouGov poll surveying people earning less than £20,000 a year discovered half of them have been forced to make cutbacks when it comes to meat, fish and vegetables.
So are they a luxury? Well, let's talk to consumer retail expert Kate Hardcastle. Morning to you.
Good morning, both. Those look fantastic, don't they?
Oh,
it fills you with joy to see natural produce like that.
Well, it does. Is that the way we're all going to have to go, growing our own?
Well, it's looking more like it. I've got to say, I went through a convenience store this morning, and convenience prices are always higher, and I thought, I'm just going to check the prices myself before I go in this morning. It was 85 pence for one plum in a pack of 4, right?
You're joking.
65 for the apples. Now, of course, you're paying a premium and you can get them more economically than that, but go into any supermarket, pick up a punnet of strawberries, and you're going to see one of two things. It's either much more expensive than you used to pay, or the weight of it is just not there because the pack sizes have shrunk so much. And it's just the reality of it. Now, this isn't all to do with the fuel crisis. Of course, we know that weather has been really intermittent, massively impacting crops for a long time now. But what we're saying is, what we're hearing is on things like apples, where there is a lot of supply, the demand's just not there. People are turning to alternatives. And once they've filled the basket with the essentials, such as the pasta, let's come on to the wine later, actually, it's the tinned goods and the frozen goods that are getting precedent rather than the fruit and veg.
It's convenience, I guess, as much as anything. It's, got something in the cupboard that's not going to go off.
If you can make a meal for £5, though, and you're looking at a set of fruit for £5, there's a big alternate, isn't there? Can I feed 5 people tonight and put something in the freezer for £5? Or for £5, do I have the luxury of a little bit of a fruit bowl? And I think also there's a waste element. A lot of us have got in our minds, we do waste food, we want to save money. It's always kind of the images of the fruit and veg bowls in your mind, isn't it? That you think of, well, I've thrown a lot away, it's been a bit of a waste, is that the right thing to do? So I think it's not a case of not having it, it's managing it wisely, and the freezer will you befriend in that.
But, as you say, if people are turning to tinned goods and frozen goods, it's not necessarily bad, is it? I mean, you can still get pack your punch in a frozen bag of anything, really, nowadays.
This is one of the myths, and I'm glad you brought it up, Isabel, because actually when you freeze at the point of picking with a lot of vegetables, it means that it's held in a state that's actually probably better than being battered around in a van for a few days on the road. So having a look at the distribution element of it, you can still get great quality fruit and veg frozen, or indeed a lot of the times you can get some substitutes in tins, which are going to be all right, maybe not as fresh, but an alternative at least to keep some of that goodness in your diet. I think what we're getting now through social media is some brilliant education, great tutorials and TikToks and Reels of just how to prepare and produce things more economically that are still good for you, and that's so important.
If it's all about saving money, why are people turning to wine instead?
I think it's just hard times at the moment, Stephen.
They just need
isn't
a
it?
drink.
I think what we heard this morning in the same Times report and the YouGov survey is people will be very hesitant to give up the spirits, the alcohol that's going with the basket spend. And I think if I look at the psychology of it, it's purely down to the fact that people are just, you know, maybe it might be something to do with those headlines that you're reading out. It's difficult times at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't begrudge people a little bit of a drink that way, can you?
Also, you can get really good deals, can't you? It doesn't have to cost the earth. You can get a good bottle of plonk these days for not a lot.
And this is where the discounters just rise and rise. They do great fruit, great veg, great meat and great alcohol at good prices, and I think that's why we've seen so many go there, and we've seen that in the results table.
Yeah, but I'll be interested to see how many people do a little raised box or a window box, whatever it is, in whatever little room they have and start planting their own veg.
All I've managed is my herbs.
Oh, you've done your herbs.
I've killed some herbs.
Did you? No, I managed the herbs. So
but you know, you can, because I mean, that doesn't go off, does it? Because you grow them, you pick it, you eat it.
And potatoes are good. They're easy.
Yeah.
Really
Sounds like
easy.
radishes are easy, and I love a radish. I'm going to give that a go.
But, yeah. Kate,
that's my note.
That's it. That's enough. Kate, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you.
Thank you. Right, stay with us. We're going to take a really quick break. After that, our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, will be joining us to tell us what we can expect from Jeremy Hunt today when he brings forward many of his plans. We'll also be hearing from Labour and all of that.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking windy across northern areas with showers. Elsewhere, prolonged sunny spells with rain soon clearing. Let's take a look at the details. So across the south and west, it will be dry with plenty of sunshine during the morning, although some high-level cloud will lead to slightly hazier skies at times. Any early rain will soon clear the south and east with plenty of sunshine developing. Southwesterly winds mostly light, top temperatures reaching 17 Celsius. Dry and windy across Wales with sunny spells, some cloudy, but maybe thick enough to give the odd light shower over high ground. Fine and dry with prolonged sunny spells for all during the morning, although skies may turn hazier at times, and winds will pick up during the morning with gustier conditions developing into the afternoon. Dry with prolonged sunny spells, particularly across the east of the area. It'll become windy across the region from late morning with gusts perhaps reaching 50 miles per hour, especially across high ground later. Windy with showers or longer spells of rain continuing to affect much of Scotland. The weather will improve a little across southern Scotland into the afternoon with some brighter spells developing. And across Northern Ireland, it will be very windy with coastal gales. Showers continue to affect western counties during the morning, but these should ease and become less frequent later. So a decent autumn day across much of England and Wales, but some gusty conditions with showers continuing elsewhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
A new Chancellor takes control and announces a new fiscal plan to reassure the markets.
Good morning. It is 9 o'clock. It's Monday, the 17th of October. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Isabel, Webster and Stephen Dixon.
Oh, well, this is what's leading the news for you this morning. And the new Chancellor will bring forward measures from the medium-term fiscal plan today. That's 2 weeks ahead of schedule. It's being announced to reassure the markets as the interest rate on UK government bonds falls this morning, suggesting confidence in the economic plans.
Hundreds of Met officers should be sacked for sexual misconduct, misogyny, racism and homophobia. That's according to the new police commissioner after a damning report revealed officers have been breaking the law and getting away with it.
From damaging priceless art to pouring pints of milk in the supermarket aisles, we've been hearing from some of the people behind some of these protest groups and asked them if those protests just go too far.
And yet more controversy for the Crown as former Prime Minister John Major now speaks out over the latest series. We'll ask, is it right to be including Princess Diana's final days for entertainment purposes? Does it blur the lines between fact and fiction?
Loads of you getting in touch this morning. Why don't you join in the conversation as well? Drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So our top story this morning, the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, will make a statement at around 11 o'clock, bringing forward measures from the medium-term fiscal plan to support fiscal sustainability.
Now, the announcement comes a fortnight earlier than expected and will, we expect, fast-track billions of pounds worth of tax and spending measures. Probably tax going up, though.
Well, it comes as Liz Truss faces yet more pressure this morning after 3 of her own MPs called publicly for her to resign.
Well, let's talk to the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Pat McFadden, who joins us now. Really good to see you this morning. Look, is this something that you welcome, that action is being taken, announcements are being taken, which should, hopefully, stabilise the markets?
It's evidence of the fear and panic in government circles. The mini-budget a few weeks ago caused enormous damage. Your viewers will have seen it. They'll be looking at it for the next year or two when they renew their mortgages, paying a Tory party premium on their borrowing costs. The country is also paying such a premium. And when we are watching the government gilt yields almost hour by hour, it's a sad testimony to where Britain has come. I was really struck over the weekend by the comments of the former deputy governor of the Bank of England, who said that the UK economy used to be looked at in a similar way to, say, the United States or Germany, but that internationally people are now looking at us like Italy or Greece. And when you see this panicked reaction where the Chancellor has to bring forward by 2 weeks his rescue package of a plan that was only announced 3 weeks before by the Prime Minister and his predecessor, then you just see what chaos has been caused.
Let's look forward, should we, rather than backwards in all that? I mean, I know politically it suits you to look back at this chaos, and it is chaos. I mean, you're not wrong about that. But even with the news of this announcement, interest rates on UK government bonds has fallen this morning, which is good news. So this actually could be very positive, couldn't it, moving forward over the next few days?
The damage has been done. We can watch the gilt yields hour by hour, as I say, but the truth is that the mismanagement that led to this situation has undermined trust in the UK economy. It has forced up people's mortgage rates. It has resulted in repeated emergency interventions in the markets in recent weeks from the Bank of England. And the people who brought you all this chaos, the philosophy that brought all this chaos, can't be the people who can fix it. And a fourth Tory Chancellor in 4 months isn't going to be the person to do it. The only way that we can fix this now, because the country is now paying a Tory instability premium in terms of where our economy is going to be a proper change in government. You can't recover from the kind of ideological recklessness that led to where we are this morning just by appointing a new Chancellor and announcing some partial U-turns. The situation's more serious than that.
Well, since you mentioned U-turns, I just want to know what Labour's position will be if the Chancellor, as expected, does go ahead with reversing that 1 penny cut on the basic rate of tax. That presents a bit of a problem, doesn't it, given that Sir Keir Starmer was in favour of that, came out saying he would. Would he therefore change his position on it?
Keir Starmer will maintain his position that this is not a time to be raising taxes on hard-working people. And the truth is, on individual measures, we're beyond that now. This was not a budget that Labour would have produced. This was not a budget in terms of its politics and philosophy behind it, which basically entailed borrowing money from my constituents in Wolverhampton South East to give a tax cut to people earning over £150,000 a year. That was the heart of the mini-budget. It's not a mini-budget that Labour would have done, nor would we have shown the sort of callous recklessness towards the institutions that safeguard our economic credibility, like the OBR, the Treasury itself, and the Bank of England. And at the root of all this, these mistakes, is the view that ideology should always trump economics, the view that institutions don't matter and they're probably a bad thing, and the view that all you need is blind faith regardless of the evidence. That's caused significant political damage, and now it's hitting people in their wallets too.
History, Pat McFadden. I mean, it's very, very recent history, I'll give you that. But this is a time now for looking forward. I mean, what strikes me is you say, well, the damage has been done. Nothing can be done. The damage has been done. It's that you want to say, well, if you're in office, you will reverse this. So why can't Jeremy Hunt reverse this?
If you want to look forward, there are 3 principles that I think need to underline any budget making in the future. The truth is that given the damage has been done, the budget making in the future will be more difficult than it was in the past because there's a cost to be paid by that recklessness. But those 3 principles have got to be financial stability first. Stop this ideology trumping economics. So financial stability first, restore faith in the institutions that safeguard our economic credibility. I mean, the government at the moment, bringing the OBR lately, reminds me of 2 people who've had an enormous high-speed car crash suddenly signing up for a speed awareness course. It's a bit late. And the third one must be that we've got to protect the vulnerable and make sure that people on average incomes don't pay the political price for the Tory party's mistakes, don't pay the economic price for the Tory party's mistakes. Those are the 3 principles that should underline budget making going forward from here.
Is that perhaps then why Sir Keir Starmer over the weekend said that when he does get into power, good Labour things may not be done straight away, that ideology has to be parked, if you like, whilst fiscal responsibility is maintained? And if that is the case, what does he mean by that? I mean, is he saying, you know what, you could vote for Labour and all the things you think it stands for, but at the end of the day, we also have the same problems of trying to have potentially raise taxes and make cuts to public services?
It's an important statement from Keir Starmer over the weekend, and it's a statement that recognises that the damage caused by what's been done, not just in recent weeks, but over 12 years with a long record of growth and so on, that the damage means that if there was a change of government, the economic situation that we inherit looks like it will be more difficult than was previously thought. And when the voters have seen such chaos from the right wing in politics and have seen such instability caused, if they are looking for an alternative, they want to know that that party will put stability first. That's what Keir Starmer was saying at the weekend, and that might mean that some of the things you want to do take a bit longer than before, because if we've learned anything from the last few weeks, is that if you don't put financial stability first, the country can pay a high cost and individual voters can pay a high cost when it comes to the standard of living, renewing their mortgages and the ability to make ends meet at the end of the month.
Pat McFadden, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get the latest now from our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, who's on the money.
So, Liam, another busy morning. I suppose it's unexpected, but will it do the thing that is its desired intent, which is to calm everything down?
Well, we'll see, won't we? I'm not convinced it will calm things down, to be honest. I think large sections of the Conservative Party in the country are going to go ballistic about this. They've rejected Jeremy Hunt many times. They don't want his kind of very centrist Remain voting, many of them would say, to pick at an old scab type of conservatism. They don't want a high-tax, high-spend country. I mean, what I'd say is just put this in context. I mean, obviously, we're going to be talking about the financial markets all day, but let's just put this in context. What did Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss actually want to do? Now, this mini-budget was badly timed and the communication strategy was woeful. They threw far too many things at the country at once. But they were actually trying to lower the share of tax of our national income from the highest in 70 years back to where it was in 2021. This was not some kind of mad, stripped-down, ultra-right-wing budget by any means. Now, of course, it was politically tin-eared, as I said 1 second after I heard the announcement to lower the top rate of tax for the wealthiest 2% of earners, of course. But to raise corporation tax by 6%, that is going to hit the economy square between the eyeballs. That's going to hit a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises at a time when they're struggling to recover from COVID. So I do think we're seeing a bit of a coup going on. And I think when we look back, when historians look back, they'll think, even though the mini-budget was badly presented, the policies were badly handled, the policies themselves were pretty mainstream.
But you see, the interesting thing is, you talk about the markets in all of this. We're so reliant on the markets, aren't we? And it's been the market reaction which has caused the problems to all of this, however it was presented. Even with the news of this announcement today at 11 o'clock, we're getting, the guilt and all the rest of it are responding better.
Slightly. They're a bit better for now. Yeah. Let's see. Once you start to take on the markets, it's never enough. They'll always win. So it's almost a question as if you show weakness that they're just going to take more and more and more. And also, I know lots of people in the currency markets. It's what I used to do. I was a financial analyst and wealth manager and so on. And they know that the British media is incredibly visceral when it wants to be. They know that the Conservative Party can be a ruthless sort of political killing machine, if you like, when it comes to regicide. And I think what happened here is and I've written this many times, once financial analysts saw that they'd made a really big sort of political mistake by lowering that top rate of tax, when so many people are worried about their bills, there was a real mismatch there between political reality and their sort of political fantasy. Then the markets thought, well, there's going to be a political scandal here. We can trade the currency short, so we can bet on it going down, and then the media goes bananas and you get into a kind of downward doom loop. But look, for people sitting at home in their cars, watching and listening to GB News, this is, of course, a worrying time. No one's saying that the Truss-Kwarteng duo has worked. Of course, it hasn't worked, and there are going to be big political changes. I think we're only seeing the start of them. But I wouldn't want to lose in this the fact that we were not going back to a sort of really low tax economy. We were coming off a situation where taxes were as high as they'd ever been in the last 70 years, and now they're about to go higher.
Interesting hearing some of the comments there. Robert Halford, not seen widely as a troublemaker, chair of the Education Select Committee, saying yesterday that libertarian jihadists had taken over the Conservative Party and that the country was being treated like laboratory mice. And, those sorts of comments from senior Conservative MPs...
He's a very... He's an incredible constituency MP. I live... he's MP for Harlow. I know how amazing he is on the ground. He's a hugely respected
and he's not
person.
A troublemaker.
And but I do think that language is too strong if Robert, with all respect to him, looks at the actual policies. That is incendiary political rhetoric rather than, I would say, serious, reasoned, grown-up analysis. The serious, reasoned, grown-up analysis is that we're about to go from having a situation where corporation tax is pretty low in the G7 to being pretty high in the G7. You can't... It's very hard to get an economy moving by taxing it more. We're going from a situation where taxes were very high across the board, and now they're going to be even higher. The reduction in national... And by the way... again, Pat McFadden, everybody wants their political pound of flesh at the moment, but Labour have agreed... OK, so they've agreed with the lowering of the national insurance in the mini-budget, OK? They agreed with that. They agreed with the lowering of the 1p on income tax, even next year, let alone the year after. And they agreed with the energy price cap, right? I mean, there you've got like 90% of the mini-budget, and they fully agreed with it. And now they're calling for a reversal of the whole thing. And the other thing, the point to make here, and again, we must not lose sight of this because lots of people at home are screaming at the television and radio, wanting people to make this point. This is happening across the world. Mortgage rates in this country are still lower than they are in the US. The average mortgage rate went from 2.5% to 3% in January to 5.5% in September, before the mini-budget. That's the trend. Now, they've accelerated a bit as a result of the mini-budget, and they may come off slightly if the markets decide they're going to move on and attack the Thai baht or another currency for a while as a plaything. So this is a long-term trend because our entire political and media class has, for the last 10 years, just waved through and barely questioned ultra-low interest rates, massive money printing. That is now starting to unwind, and whoever was British Prime Minister at the time was going to have a difficult time when that started to happen. Well, now it's happening.
Yeah. OK. Liam, for now.
Thank you. Right, stay with us. Up next is Netflix ruining the royal family. We'll be discussing that with Jenny Bond after the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking windy across northern areas with showers. Elsewhere, prolonged sunny spells with rain soon clearing. Let's take a look at the details. So across the south and west, it will be dry with plenty of sunshine during the morning, although some high-level cloud will lead to slightly hazier skies at times. Any early rain will soon clear the south and east with plenty of sunshine developing. Southwesterly winds mostly light, top temperatures reaching 17 Celsius. Dry and windy across Wales with sunny spells, some cloudy, but maybe thick enough to give the odd light shower over high ground. Fine and dry with prolonged sunny spells for all during the morning, although skies may turn hazier at times, and winds will pick up during the morning with gustier conditions developing into the afternoon. Dry with prolonged sunny spells, particularly across the east of the area. It'll become windy across the region from late morning with gusts perhaps reaching 50 miles per hour, especially across high ground later. Windy with showers or longer spells of rain continuing to affect much of Scotland. The weather will improve a little across southern Scotland into the afternoon with some brighter spells developing. And across Northern Ireland, it will be very windy with coastal gales. Showers continue to affect western counties during the morning, but these should ease and become less frequent later. So a decent autumn day across much of England and Wales, but some gusty conditions with showers continuing elsewhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. It's 9:21. The latest series of The Crown is getting lots of PR, isn't it? It's almost like they did it on purpose. They're set to spark controversy as critics say it portrays the royal family in a negative light.
Yes, former Prime Minister Sir John Major has spoken out about scenes featuring the late Princess Diana before her death. Also about a meeting that supposedly took place between him and Charles, and he's called it all a barrel of nonsense. Let's talk to the royal commentator, Jenny Bond. Jenny, morning to you. I mean, look, we need to take that as read, don't we? I mean, this is a drama at the end of the day. We really shouldn't believe actually a single word we hear from it, should we?
You're right. And that's why I find it so difficult to understand Netflix's reluctance to put a disclaimer at the beginning. I don't see what the problem is with saying, this is a drama rooted in some facts, but it is fiction. And it's a wonderful drama. I really have enjoyed certainly the earlier series. I very much enjoyed. I think it's getting more and more difficult as we come to modern times, when we come right up to depicting Charles, Camilla, Diana, and the late Queen. I think things get very, very sensitive. I mean, I don't know how you'd feel about your family being portrayed in a way that you deem to be false, to be sensational, and you can say nothing about it because you're a member of the royal family, or you can say very little. I think it's very sensitive and very tough, and I think they should put a disclaimer.
Yeah, not least when they're tackling subjects like, extramarital affairs or the death of a loved one. I mean, as you say, incredibly difficult if that was your own family. I thought John Major's choice of words was absolutely spot on when he described some of it as damaging and malicious fiction. And, one wonders if there's a law case to be had in all of this.
I don't imagine there is, because it is a drama. It is fiction, but they're just not making that clear enough. I don't think there's really going to be long-term damage to the royal family. I think it's becoming a bit distasteful. But yeah, I shall watch it. But what worries me is that some younger people who watch it, some people that I know, friends of my daughters, people in their 30s who watch me reporting on the royals for 30 years, yet they still believe this, and they come to me and say, I didn't know that was true. I said, well, it's not. And the other thing is, I don't really see why they've got to make up quite so much. We all called it, and still call it to an extent, a soap opera. It's a story that I have said so many times on air, I could not have made that up. and I'm reporting on it. Why do they need to make so much up when the truth is extraordinary in itself?
This is the fundamental problem, though, isn't it, Jenny? With the greatest of respect to you and to Isabel here, you know, we say, well, you know, there are big questions to be asked, but we still watch it. Now, I've got to confess, I've never seen a minute of it, so, you know, it doesn't apply to me.
Oh, I love it.
But you're still watching it, Jenny. Maybe you shouldn't.
I agree with you. Maybe I shouldn't. And the reason I shouldn't is that sometimes I get very engrossed in it. And then a year or two goes by and I think back to series 2 or something. And I think, oh gosh, did that really happen? Did I report on? Is that true or not? And I get confused in my own head. So you're right, I shouldn't watch it. But it's dramatic. Look, reporting on the story has been dramatic enough. And watching it reenacted, even though it's wrong in many parts, it's chronologically wrong, it's factually wrong, it's still a riveting good watch.
Yeah, look, talking about plot twists back in the real world, Ghislaine Maxwell interjecting with perhaps a very unwelcome turn of phrase, calling Prince Andrew her dear friend from her prison cell. I'm sure that won't be helping his cause, will it?
I don't think it will. She says, yes, he is and has been her dear friend. But at the same time, she's acknowledged in this, this extraordinary interview from prison, she's acknowledged that she understands that the friendship can no longer continue and it is over. But she also makes the claim that the notorious photograph of Prince Andrew with the woman who alleged sexual abuse, sexual allegations against him, Virginia Giuffre, she claims that photo is fake in her opinion, which is something that Andrew's side has said many times, but we don't know the truth of that, of course. But she is riding into Andrew's defence here.
Look, Jenny, really good, as always, to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Enjoy the crown, I will.
I know you will, I know.
That's it from us. You've got a well-earned couple of days off.
I've got 3 days off.
I'll be back bright and early. I'm joined tomorrow by Paul Hawkins. We'll be back at 6 o'clock, and up next, it's the lovely Tom Harwood.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking windy across northern areas with showers. Elsewhere, prolonged sunny spells with rain soon clearing. Let's take a look at the details. So across the south and west, it will be dry with plenty of sunshine during the morning, although some high-level cloud will lead to slightly hazier skies at times. Any early rain will soon clear the south and east with plenty of sunshine developing. Southwesterly winds mostly light, top temperatures reaching 17 Celsius. Dry and windy across Wales with sunny spells, some cloudy, but maybe thick enough to give the odd light shower over high ground. Fine and dry with prolonged sunny spells for all during the morning, although skies may turn hazier at times, and winds will pick up during the morning with gustier conditions developing into the afternoon. Dry with prolonged sunny spells, particularly across the east of the area. It'll become windy across the region from late morning with gusts perhaps reaching 50 miles per hour, especially across high ground later. Windy with showers or longer spells of rain continuing to affect much of Scotland. The weather will improve a little across southern Scotland into the afternoon with some brighter spells developing. And across Northern Ireland, it will be very windy with coastal gales. Showers continue to affect western counties during the morning, but these should ease and become less frequent later. So a decent autumn day across much of England and Wales, but some gusty conditions with showers continuing elsewhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.